sibabiza o service users. Bengicela Prof uma ungasithi message wako so that sizokwazi ukuthi emva kwakho sithathe abawu-2 on the floor abazanda ukubeka nje. Bengicela ukuthi uma sesiya ku floor ngicela singaphindi lokho bese kushiwe niyabona. Ungafuna ukuyisho ngezulu esingcono noma ngesingesi esingcono. Abawu-2 bangazi prepare uzothi umfundisi makaqeda sithathe abawu-2 nimzwile uDeputy Minister waka Justice izothi egcineni sithi sam lento beyishilo. Mfundisi.
Thank you very much, Deputy Minister of Social Development.
Sound, help us with the mic.
Hello, thank you. Thank you very much, DM, for this opportunity. I just want to greet all stakeholders present here. Bengifuna nje Deputy Minister wazi ukuthi Dr. Khanaga Matume is also here. Possibly during the Ebuhlanti televised program or 25 minutes dialogue, I would like to extend an invitation to Dr. Khanaga to represent men of South Africa. Before ngikhulume DM, ngizocela nje ozakwethu lapha kana kwi-sex workers ningisize nje namhlanje ningakhuluma indaba zethu umkamo ukhona. Angithi kune confidentiality nakwi business angithi. All right, thank you so much. Hayi siyazwana ke. Kuna too much interpretation kwinto ene sex work ne faith. And I'm standing here, I just want to clarify a few things in Khalepans. Currently, DM, we're putting together a panel of scholars, Christian scholars in particular. We want to investigate few things. Let's understand the Bible as Africans. Our intention is not to edit scriptures. Unfortunately, it's too late. We can't edit that book. Kune verse enithanda too much. Phaya ku John 8, chapter 8. St. John, lapho apparently kuno mama. Abafaras, they wanted to stone her. Remember? That story is very popular around the world, but there is no link between that story and sex work. Lesser stories say adultery, and adultery is not sex work. So before we use the Bible to suppress different views and other people, try to understand it first. Whereas sizopela si embarrassana everywhere, using Bible to justify crime. That chapter is very clear. The Pharisees wanted to trap Jesus. They were testing him. It was not about that woman. They wanted to test Christ. That's all. The Bible is very clear. They even created the story of adultery. There are no facts. She was committing adultery, but they wanted to trap Christ. But there's a sexy story you don't read kuma scriptures. Ipaya ku St. Luke. Naleyo, because we must be careful. Hence I said we can't edit scriptures, unfortunately, because ama Christu as a prostitute, nama Judah as a prostitute. even Muslims as prostitute. They don't understand what is a prostitute in a sex work is not the same thing. Hallelujah. Prostitution ihamba ne human trafficking. It's when you are forced. Right? But shame oza kwethu. That is why sibafaka esikolweni before babe ngabefundisi, so that you understand these things. Nalapho kunale beautiful story kuthiwa there was this woman. Apparently Christ was invited by Simon and friends for lunch, something like that. And then here's this woman from this very same town carrying a perfume, and she wanted to bless Christ, you know? And according to Ozagwetu, that woman was a sex worker. And Christ was enjoying himself with that perfume, and she was even using her tears to wipe him, and Christ was in peace with this lady. They know this lady. Those ones who invited Christ, apparently they knew her. How come? You know? And guess what? They started to, in fact, they battered the offense. They were offended and started to complain. How come? And blah, blah, blah. And Christ was very clear that, but when I came here, and Lucis Lona, wavela tatamati inyembe zake, wangithi nje. And ngazizo ukuthi, yeah, you know what? I'm there. But mangi iyale ezansi in mang conclude that this, Jesus had no issues with that woman. Wayengaphathanga even a list of sins. He did not go through izono zalosisi amkhumbuze ngezinto azenzile emhlabeni. uJesu wayezenjoyela nje ukuphathwa kamnandi kangaka wade washo ukuthi you know what bengihleli nani la, you did not offer anything and weza lo sisi wangithi nje. And uthe mayikhuluma nalo sisi wathi your faith has saved you and go in peace. Azangathi hlukana nokuhamba ulala umane uhlala namadoda umane uphina nami umane usenza lena le uma estradini zange akhulume lezo zinto uJesu. So I don't understand where this thing iphuma kuphi, this thing of insulting you. Sometimes si pretending ngathi siyathenga and then singafuni ukukhokha. Kanti ubani nezono la? Kanti ubani sina la? Mangasafuna ukukhokha ubani sina? And we don't understand as well, Deputy Minister, ukuthi ke sibone lapha eGoli, I'm not sure iyenzeka la. Sithenge, of course iqamba manga kulabafazi bethu sithi siya kwi conference, you know. I'm going to a conference, but uyazazi uyayiheal bro. Lento ukuthi maso uthengile and then umntwana wabantu umbulale ngoba ungafuna ukukhokha. Maybe men sector izophendula ukuthi yini esinoyenza during that dialogue with Ebuhlanti, so that everybody in this country can see ukuthi kuzoba ne commitment from our side as men of South Africa. But kwicala labefundisi, there's something going on, DM. We're putting together all our faith organizations or movements. We need to investigate, but Amajuba ayayibhalelani into ethize, so that we understand and not as Africans good, we can't swallow everything from Middle East. Thank you.
Hayi kusho ukuthi bakuzwile mfundisi. Yabana siza sishayina esandla ngoba uma ngabe uyi sex worker umfundisi ucabanga ukuthi uphethe amakhiya wasezulwini. Ngizocela kule row abaphethe ama roving mic, let's start hearing the voices of sex workers. Asiqale abawuthunje kule row. mawukhuluma uzosukuma, mawufuna kuzisho uzozisho, mawungafuni nakhona ku right. Sibe very brief sizokwazi kuba namo yabantu abakhulumayo. Sisacela ukuthi I-technology isilungisele uDeputy Minister wamaphoyisa. Yebo sisi wami, go ahead. Asiqhubekeni. Sound. Sound. Mike. Sincediseni lapho.
1 2 1 2.
Perfect.
Sanibonani nonke. Mina igama lami uJoyce. Siyabonga nikuza la eNewcastle kweni. Mina siZulu angisazi kahle kahle.
Cela nikhulume noma yiphi language enifuna kuyikhuluma.
Okay. I don't know English. I don't know Zulu. I will speak English. Here in Newcastle, we have a lot of problems, especially us, work sectors. Others, we go to, when we working at the forest, but our problem is only one thing. We hide somewhere in the forest when we are working, but our problem is police. They follow us to the forest and videoizing us. Others, they force us to do sex and they're videoizing us. They're at the forest. And there is something I want to ask. Last week, we get arrested and we go to the police station. But I didn't understand what was happening there. They take us a screenshot, our whole body, and fingerprints. After that, after 1 day, they tell us to go home, but they want 1.5 fine. 1.5 fine. Here we're working in the forest. We don't have rooms. We don't have a house. Where did we get that 1.5 to pay them? And now we're waiting on 24. I don't know the date. We must go to court to attend that matter for those that arrest us. The day we get arrested, they hit us using pepper sprays, forced us to go inside the van. And we don't have anything to do. We sleep there the whole day, and they take us out after 1 day. We sleep there and the whole day, on 2 o'clock the next day, they take it outside. What we want to know, why they take us screenshot our body, but we didn't communicate anything. We were standing in the street. We didn't steal anything. But what they did, the police station, if you ask them, we want your badge, they don't want to show us their badges. What they do, they force us to go inside the van. And others, they're coming, they want sex. And if they want sex, we give them. And we want our money, they refuse. Others, we know they are policies. They're using their private cars. They come and take us and buy us. When they finish, they left us here in the forest. And when we use a client with a car, we go far away from our work, from our street. So we have to work even at night from that side and walk to come in town. There is nothing we can do. We need help here in Newcastle because they don't have rooms. Sometimes they come, take our phone, a client come and take, let's go see how much, and we tell him with our price and we go. When you come back there, we don't have anything. You take your bag, you take your phone, take your money, and they take all our clothes. We walk naked. And if you go to police to report this matter, they say they don't involve in our matters for Mahosha because we got a lot of things. And a client can beat me and hit me and take my things. We go again to police and report. There's no response for the police come to help us. So our problems here, we don't have anyone to help, special police ones. We need help for police, but they don't help us. Thank you, Idando.
Thank you very much. Let's take the second one. See, we've heard you, Ma'am Joyce. Let's take the second hand in this row. Second hand in this row. Association. Ageko second hand ngala. Okay, let's get to the middle here. Okay. Khuluma ma association inemasifuna kukhuluma.
Yebo sanibonani.
Sawubona Ntasi.
Yebo mina igama lami nguGugu ngwakaXulu. Ngizokhulumela ama-sex worker ngendlela esiphatheka ngayo kabi lapha la sisebenzela khona la eNewcastle. Ayi siyahlukumezeka kakhulu. Ngoba egcineni sineyingane siqashile siyarenta abanye bethi bayondla emakhaya kodwa egcineni siyahlukumezeka ngempatho esiyitholayo lapha la sisebenzela khona. Anginawo amaningi ngiyabonga.
Kubonga thina ngisabiza uDeputy Minister wamaphoyisa ngicela nje ukuthi sikhumbuzane ukuthi isex work ngokwayo eSouth Africa it's still a crime, but uma ngabe ushayiwe, when you ushayiwe, we start by saying it's a woman that has been abused. Ukuthi what work you do, it's irrelevant. Into yokuqala, it's you have been abused as a woman. When I get abused, Deputy Minister bungeni ndawo. And I don't think mangifike police station, kumele manje ngiqale ngithi I'm a sex worker before bangincedisa. Asizwe because I am coming to report assault. And that is gender-based violence and femicide. Let's welcome Deputy Minister Castle Matale, Deputy Minister wamaphoyisa. Deputy Minister, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, Deputy Minister Panezulu, our host, Deputy Minister John Jeffries, and Deputy Minister Kappa, and everybody who's with you there at Amajuba. I must confess, Deputy Minister, that I have been having because of the audio, the system. I think our bandwidth is connectivity is very low. And as a result, you don't hear what is being said from the main hall. One was struggling just to hear what you were saying. And even when we were opening, I just realized that there was a national anthem was being sung when I could pick up some snippets of the song, but you know it was very, very difficult. Even the comments that were made by the people who spoke before me, I think it was a referent, if I'm not mistaken. I just could not hear what he was saying. And the people who came after him, I heard somebody talking about the bush, and I don't know what was happening. I just could not follow. So I stand a danger of responding to what was not asked. But from our side, given the the nature of the constituency we are talking with, which is a platform with sex workers, which we have held before with your deputy minister. And we have had, of course, another engagement in Rustenburg, Northwest ourselves with sex workers. So I have an understanding of the issues that we are talking about and the vulnerability that people who work in this industry have, particularly given the attitude of society and where we come from as a country. So as we speak, I think I heard you somewhere saying that reminding people about sex work, but I think you were saying it's illegal in terms of the law. And then when we force the law, and when something is against the law, we must make sure that the law is followed. And here we have people who are South Africans who engage in an activity that, as we speak, has not been legalized. And this forum and the constituency itself have been at the forefront of the legalization of the trade. And I think what has been achieved to date is that we have been able to get the country to start to talk about the legalization of sex work. And this is a major achievement in my understanding. And I think even the constituency itself is quite grateful about the fact that we are debating these matters. And I think the Deputy Minister, John Jeffries, spoke about the processes of legalizing this and opening up a public hearing program that will ultimately lead to the formulation of legislation that must govern this environment. So this is a major achievement. And before the industry can be legalized, from the side of the South African police, we are not saying that we are enforcing the law, sex work is illegal, therefore it must be treated like the way we are dealing with lawbreakers. We have adopted an approach that we must engage in activities that will assist the South African police to have a different approach towards interacting with sex workers. And in this regard, there have been programs that the South African police, together with and what I can call an NGO called Cultuur and Ontspanningscentrum of Netherlands Dignity, Diversity and Policing Project, which is intended to assist in the training of police officers with regard to how they should interact, their attitude towards embracing and diversity when they deal with sex workers and the LGBTQ community in the country. And in this regard, as part of this partnership, a service level agreement to train no less than 1,300 South African police officials was agreed to. And of course, we are all aware that from 2019 December and 2020, the whole last year, we have been faced with the COVID program. And this have had a bearing on the implementation of this program. But besides this, we have been able to train over 357 police officers between March and September. I think there is an echo or somebody's mic is on and they are talking. So it appears like the program director is interacting with me. So if people can, this office trained particularly from the following provinces: Gauteng, Western Cape, and KwaZulu-Natal. As a ministry, we remain resolute in our mandate of combating and preventing all forms of crime, including human rights violation within our society, to continue to prevent women, girls, and other vulnerable groups from being exposed to environment like this. I know that despite this good intention from the leadership of the South African police and the training that I say there are officers that have gone through, the experience of sex workers in other parts of the country is such that they are treated in a manner that is not appropriate. And I get even the speakers who were speaking earlier on, whom I did not capture their questions or their comment appropriately. They talk about the treatment that they get from the South African police services. This is as a result of some of our police officers who have not been reached, who have not internalized the approach that we have adopted as an institution. And you will agree with me that for the South African police to change their attitude, it's not only them alone, but the entire country needs to change its attitude towards sex workers. And if we are able to engage on a massive education campaign in Chad that will involve the entirety of our society, we will make a meaningful contribution towards our fight against the exploitation and harassment of the sex workers, because this is a societal problem. We have a society with an attitude, and it will take not only through social development, but all other departments coming to the party for us to succeed in this regard, including your basic education and higher education, because children must be taught from an early age to develop attitude that will enable them to interface with society broadly without the attitude that we currently see being meted towards the sex workers. We will continue, Deputy Minister, to support your programs and not tire in educating our police officers so that they change their attitude when they interact with sex workers. They should treat them with respect. They should treat them with dignity, because they too are human beings and they qualify to be afforded all the rights that are afforded to every South African. Their rights must be respected because they are human beings too. Thank you very much for having invited us to be part of this interaction, Deputy Minister. And we have already indicated through your office that we will request to be excused at some point because of other period commitment that we have had as an office. But we appreciate the fact that we are part of this interaction. And I came with Colonel Mhlongo, who will remain part of the proceedings. If there are issues that needs the attention of the South African Police Service, he will take note of that. And if some of the things he can't hear because the connectivity is very terrible, I think the organizers of this event can ensure that you give him, you give Colonel Mhlongo whatever have been discussed here, including bringing some to my office, because head of my office is part of the proceedings as we speak, Deputy Minister. So we will be able to process whatever is needed that the South African police must continuously attend to. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be a long struggle, but this is a struggle we are prepared together, working together with the sex workers themselves and your office, Deputy Minister, to continue in this struggle until victory is guaranteed. Thanks very much for this opportunity.
We thank you very much, Deputy Minister. At least sizwela ngithi the police have a responsibility to treat us with dignity and respect. So sithi ukhona uKalenel njengoba eshilo ukhona la uhleli unathi and ngicabanga ukuthi sizoze sifike la kumele sifike khona. Ngifuna ukuthi usonke gender awu uyawalwela amalungelo wama sex workers asibashayeleni izandla. Hayi noma ngabe anisiboni ngicela nazi ukuthi you do have a chief sex worker ozothi in all of those important platforms ayenze sure ukuthi the rights of sex workers are always respected. Himina ko leyo. Yabana makubalo chief o sex worker bangangishiyi nami bengibale khona lapho. Ngicela ukuthi uma Mxapha asayilungisa sithathe 2 hands la. Sizocela uDeputy Minister wa Small Business asayilungisa ngicela kuthatha izandla ezu2 la phakathi nendawo. Sincedeni abaphethe uMike njengoba sesishile sesikhulumile ngamaphoyisa sesikhulumile ngebehavior yabo kuningi esiya through kona siqale sizwe ukuthi ngabe o social worker bona basiphatha kanjani. Do we have abazokhuluma la? Next. Ngathi bo sex worker bamba happy kakhulu namhlanje. That side. Okay, go ahead.
Sanibona. Igama lami mama Guysini angizange ukucisha okuningi. Sina kakhulu ma sex workers la eNyukhasela Guysini ngoba sila siyazi ukuthi sixabene kakhulu noSAPS amaphoyisa. Ngiyacabanga ke sesiphendulekile kokunye kodwa angazi sazobona ukuhamba kwesikhathi. Ngisacela ukuthi sikhumbule Guysini ukuthi why silana. Ngiyacabanga sonke besingesathi isikhathi sethu sizohlala nje la just ukuthi sizodla kudlala egcineni asilalele kuze bezosilalela. Thank you.
Olandelayo.
Sanibonani. Igama lami uDuduzile Dlamini. I'm from Swet Sex Workers Education and Advocacy Task Force. I'm a founder of the project called Mothers for the Future. Zoqala ngibonge nje uDM ngeopportunity athe wasenzela yona la KwaZulu Natal and kudala idonsa. Uyidonsile shem sesithe sala. Gizophinde ngiraise about focus on the children of sex workers. Ingane zama sex workers they experience a double what their mothers going through. First thing, the children of sex workers they have a challenge of getting a birth certificate. Secondly, ingane zama sex workers ubeke wa mention uDM mayikhuluma ngokuthi asithanda ukuthi sithi singama sex workers phinde neingane zethu ziba ama sex worker. They have a challenge of getting bullied from the schools because of the work that is done by their mothers. The children of sex workers affected by HIV, they also struggle in terms of the mothers when they died. They are defaulters. No one who support the children of sex workers. And then we do not have a proper system workers. Some of the sex workers, they experience their children are taken away from them. I definitely know that the sex workers, they love their children, but it's just that they have challenges and circumstances, but their children are taken away. Some of the sex workers, they don't know what they sign in the documents, and they do not have an opportunity to get to understand because some, they are not well educated. The children of sex workers, they experience a lot from the community. the stigma and discrimination against them. And they always left behind in all programs that are developed specific for South Africa. During the COVID-19, we were very struggling. There was a lot of children, sex workers who deliver the children without going to clinic when we're talking about prenatal health and the mental issues, the depress, the pressure of not making money for their mothers. It was also bebehlukumezeka kakhulu nabantwana bama-sex worker nge-COVID-19 because omama they couldn't able to provide for their children. So our focus kakhulu ngibonga nje le opportunity because it's where we can able now to design a system there where Mothers for the Future can partnership with DSD in terms of SASSA grant, in terms of support and education of the children of sex workers. We've done a research with Global Promise where it was indicating the children of sex workers that they have a problem of growing with anger and they not going to school properly because they leave the school immediately. Why they're getting bullied and they become criminals. The girls, they become very early stage to do the sex work. So it's a cycle. So today, I think that is a good dialogue that way. How are we going to build this and make sure that we protect children of sex workers to get bullied, stigmatized, make sure that they're taking their medication in time, but also the education because it's important. How do we support them and make sure that they're not getting bullied? Thank you.
Siyabonga kakhulu. I want to acknowledge ku platform Steve Mapaseka Litsike, Deputy Chairperson we South African National AIDS Council. Ngicela kunitshela namhlanje ningazothi nizwe emgwaqweni. No social worker has the right. No social worker has the right to remove your child just because you are a sex worker. Ningathi nizwe bathi ayikho i-social worker enesizathu sokuthi i-remove ingane just because umama wayo ayi-sex worker. Se remove ingane because ziyahlukumezeka, because aziphathekile kahle, not because of the work the parents are doing. Leyo yona i-wrong kakhulu. Besicela nisincede sound, sicela u-Deputy Minister uzofollowishwa u-Steve immediately. Steve, now ube ready. Ma Deputy Minister pa aqeda wa Deputy Minister ka Small Business. Ngiyathemba ukuthi the technical guys are busy resolving the frustration Deputy Ministers on the platform and all the people on the platform are experiencing. Deputy Minister, you have the floor.
Good afternoon. My name is Zolega Kapa and Deputy Minister, Small Business Development, as already introduced by my leader, Deputy Minister on Social Development, who is hosting us. Again, ngiphakameni ngibonge kakhulu isikhathi lesi ngoba usimemile ukuthi sizohlanganyela kulolu daba olukhulu kakhulu. Thina njengomnyango siyajabula ukuthi sithole lesikhathi, sithole futhi nokuhlangana nabanye abantu baseMzantsi Afrika. Uhle umnyango wo social development okwenzile. Because the other speakers, though I could not exactly pick up due to communication, but at least I did get up a few matters that I will refer my engagement to. I want to state that the issue of sex workers is indeed highly contested at international levels. But South Africa is not really very firm on its positions, particularly that we as a country, as stated by Deputy Minister Matale, who spoke before me, we have not decriminalized. But not decriminalizing can make us not to utilize the other available pieces of policies from various organizations. With that, we still have power to protect our people, our own. I'll refer this matter to the issue of sex work, of international conventions and protocols. Those which South Africa has ratified, I think around in 2018. Also the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights, which also South Africa has actually ratified. In that of the United Nations, we have equality in dignity and rights that we have as a country. The right to recognition before the law and also equality before the law. We also the right to protection by the law, the right to work, free choices of employment, equal payment, equal pay for equal work done or value of that work. The right to health. With this one, we as a country and as we see it as a department, is almost covers a lot to protect our people using what we have actually ratified through the Convention of Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, that is CEDAW, which which we ratified in 1995. I think the former Minister of Social Development and the President of the Women's League, they were very vocal in coming back to Parliament, and the multi-women's caucus was a multi-party women's caucus in the South African Parliament. Also did engage in the discussion, particularly and resolutions towards decriminalization of sex work. I think it was in 20. I do want to therefore endorse that the fact we as South Africans, we as different departments with different mandates, how to serve our people under the same one parliament, one government, one South Africa. We need to be strictly adhering to what we have ratified while processes are being carried out by necessary departments in ensuring that they protect our people. One, emphasize the health issue to ensure that as I've heard in my letter, they explaining the difficulty they undergo, mentioning having to go into the bush, ensuring that no one extremely vulnerable, because when payments come, anything can happen to you. There will be instances where the one served will not be wanting to pay for the service or the price, and there will be a dispute, and being a woman, that particular provider becomes very vulnerable. They might in the process even lose their lives, and that goes against the spirit of these other organizations, resolution on the matter of protection of women, and actually ensuring that we outlaw violence against women under any circumstances. As a department, therefore, feel strongly that our department in safety and security, as well as those in constitutional development, should continue to bring along sooner this decriminalization, as it will ensure that nothing is done in secret, running away from law, and taking the advantage of the Constitution of South Africa of freedom of choice, freedom of choosing a particular employment or a particular business to be engaged in. The exploitation is, as the young lady has actually informed us in this platform, that they do not have any way to conduct their business. They are not protected. There is no law that regulates how they should be treated under such circumstances. This in any way encourages the other gangsters and pimps to be able to in a way run amok the human trafficking, and also know that those people don't have rights, and therefore taking them to court is always very difficult, let alone that it can even lead to young women or women losing their life through this process. But I was just going there as a background as to what should happen. Indeed, I think issue, especially the health and the department and SAPS, particularly supplying of necessary essentials that are being used there to protect even the nation itself. That is supply of condoms, supply of all essentials that these people might need. I don't know what to say insofar as protection and accommodation is concerned, because as long as we remain with this gap of not being able to decriminalize that in our arrangements, but I feel strongly, particularly as a mother, that this is taking too long, because that type of activity and life and the environment is very much dangerous and needs to be addressed, instead of us want to stop it, because it's not our choice. And South Africans have got a right to choose in terms of their prosecution. I'm called upon to speak more on what is this Department of Small Business Development, what is their mandate, and what are we capable to do as umnyango. Mina-ke ngibona kakhulu ukuthi kufanele sibabheke emsebenzini ngendlela efana nawo wonke umuntu wase-South Africa. They should there's equality before the law, and people should be respected, and also their choices, because it's their choices. They need to be protected and ensure that they are treated with respect at all costs. That one cannot be compromised. We encourage, because in terms of these institutions I've quoted above, the right to work by sex workers as rights under CEDAW, the right to equal protection of the law and freedom from discrimination, freedom from violence, right to work, right to privacy, and freedom of arbitrary interference, right to health, right to marriage and family life. And comply to that arrangement as a Department of Small Business. And therefore, other matters that need to be that we will be discussing and will be taking forward with the Deputy Minister, my colleague who is hosting us today. I would want to say our cooperation and collaboration doesn't the topic and this as a guest to these members referred to as sex workers. And I also would want to encourage all of us to do away in order to comply, do away with the issue of adult prostitution, but rather sex work, as this one was already seen as derogative indeed. So with the sex workers, they suppose themselves to be organized themselves into groups of cooperatives that might have a right to actually acquire, even for buying and not asking for gifts, these protective requirements wherever they are. They can be supported as South African women, as South African with their rights, and the other cooperatives that they deem will also bring back their dignity in this regard. So I wish we would do more, Mama Roman Zulu, to take this work and work harder and empower as you do every day, as you have made it upon your life beyond the deployment and as a calling that we do take care of the vulnerables and those who are actually undermined. I think I didn't leave out the input by the United Nations to say we appreciate their role in ensuring that they go all the way to ensure that we are in a position to do what is right. Not only do it, but to make it seen by all that we are complying to these very important provisions, which indeed go a long way to protect those who are actually who are downtrodden, who are undermined.
Asishayeleni
not to be
uDeputy Minister
Thank you very
izandla.
much. Yes,
Thank you very much, Deputy Minister. Siyabonga. Asikhumbuzaneni, sex work is? Yebo. And simzwile uDeputy Minister uthe, thina esingasafuni ukuba ku-sex work, sinayo i-right yokufoma ama-cooperatives so that singabi kwi-sex work ngenkani, angithi? Sibe ku-sex work ngoba sithanda. Ngoba ngesinye isikhathi sinokucabanga ukuthi abomama bafostiwe kuba kwi-sex work. Siwumnyango ka-social development sithi also namhlanje we want to ask for your partnership. Sicela udlelwano so that nisincedise ukuthi izingane ezingaphansi kwa-18 singabi khona ku-sex work. Siyavuma. So nina nizoba inyawo zethu, amahlo wethu, and ngizonika a zero rated number la ungadingi khona i-airtime. Futhi nala uzokwazi ukuthumela ngisho please call me uthole uncedo. Asimukele uchairperson we-civil society ku-South African National AIDS Council naye asithi umlayezo wakhe omfishana asithi vava bese sibuyela ku-floor abazofuna ukukhuluma bayilungise siqhubeke ngohlelo. Steve, you have the floor. Mara, the problem is you are upside down. So we know you like break dancing, Mara. Today we just want to see you stand. Yeah, you are right now. Great, go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much, Deputy Minister Mokgopane Zulu, who's also hosting this most important conversation, dialogue. I think we pride ourselves, Deputy Minister, because we have championed very critical issues in the past, and you continue to do that. So we congratulate you as a society. Greetings also to other deputy ministers who joined here. It's quite important that we've shown this conversation. My colleagues from civil society sectors, see Comrade Yasi is also there, but also colleagues from development agencies, and as well as Comrade who's also online. And greetings to all sex workers who are in the house, because it's quite important to recognize that this is your space, this is the space created that we can converse. Deputy Minister, our message is quite clear as civil society. We've done it and we've said it before, that sex work is work. When adult concerned, it's the most important thing. And I think I cannot emphasize your point very much about children becoming children and allowing their development, to give them more and beautiful aspiration in the future. However, I think in the case of sex work, we are talking about adults, in this case, who are concerned. I think what is quite important, sex work, like much other, when you look at how responses work in South Africa, I mean, we are also talking about a country that still in any way. However, I think we were forced look at the nuances of behavioral and biological and social and structural drivers that put sex workers in their diversity at risk and vulnerability of contracting HIV. I think the public health intervention implementers assumed, that sexual intercourse, that our clients seek services of sex workers without the knowledge of their spouses. And this is one of the things that, needed us as a country to look beyond the context of who really is a sex worker. And I think we needed to understand that it's not only a cisgender individual, it also includes sex workers who are female, who includes also transgender persons, men who have sex with men, who also could be sex workers. So we needed to go beyond the idea of just a heteronormative aspect, but also sex work, is motivated by a number of issues. And I'm encouraged listening to the Deputy Minister of Small Business. I was encouraged listening to you, Deputy Minister Bokopane, to speak about some of the elements that motivate sex work. That includes poverty, that includes inequality, and also that includes many issues that we are facing our communities. So the development agenda doesn't start at early stages, behind. But we also do realize it's not only just for the poor. We find sex work in every society, in every community. But in most cases where we speak about people in the informal or formal societies, it's led by various motivation. Now, approximately over 180,000 individuals in South Africa make a living in the sex industry. And in the context of high employment and limited income generation option, sex work enables many cisgender, transgender women and men to earn a livelihood and provide for their families. And I think it's quite important. The idea of sex work, it's work, must help people to be able to earn a livelihood. And I think our law enforcers, our policymakers must understand why sex work is work. And I think for us as civil society, we speak about, some of the clauses that are enshrined in the Constitution that speaks about equality, that speaks about right of association, and also that non-discrimination must be enforced to ensure that sex workers do enjoy the human rights that we have enshrined. So we cannot be talking about human rights, but these human rights are not extended to sex sex workers. And in this case, this is why sex workers are branding the bride of criminalization in the basis of our own laws. Now, our message also, Deputy Minister, to government of South Africa, the pace at which we need to be responding to the improvement of health outcomes for sex workers has been very slow. Now, we are fortunate, first, to say the South African National AIDS Council is the only country in the region with a strategy, clearly crafted strategy to improve the rights and lives of of sex workers in this case. And of course, all other countries have looked at key population integration in their responses and so forth. But South Africa has a strategy which is often reviewed every 3-4 years or so. And sex work strategy is quite important for us as people and civil society. It's also quite important for sex workers. But we want an advancement around legal framework on sex work. We want advancement, including of addressing some of the disheartening negative health and economic consequences health workers are experiencing, not only for sex workers, their clients and their families, but also for the population as a whole. The devastating consequences of HIV on sex worker population, it's a current call on health practitioners, community activists, researchers, policymakers to demand as a whole, as the strategy suggests. So our message to our message to justice really is that some of these recommendations, whether they are made by Law Reform Commission, must be fast-tracked. We must start from a time of prejudice in the past. South Africa understands this. We can't hold on to colonial laws. They are not working for us as Africans. We want everybody to hold on to the judiciary system, to hold on to the protection of the law, because protection anyway is in the law. So the social norms and values that recognize sex work as work and ensure that sex workers receive the same protection as other people does. Now, to the department providers, they should enhance surveillance system in order for data to be collected and used at the local level. As such, a system should facilitate size estimate, HIV prevalence, as well as measures of entry and retention along HIV treatment. We have a beautiful NSP, but this must be extended to all to address all these challenges. Now, last point I want to make, Deputy Minister, the current models of service delivery should be scaled and universal access. Different spaces, geographical level, becomes a challenge for sex workers. Sex workers in Pretoria or sex workers in Cape Town are not treated the same as sex workers you find in Northern Cape or in Lusikisiki. So we want to make sure that the Department of Health should scale up the approach where universal access to services improved. Services should be provided by sensitive and competent staff people with flexible and appropriate hours of location that are accessible for sex workers. We know the situations and circumstances of which sex workers work. So we need to improve our response. So responding around mobility, migration that requires to support retention of care. Now, I think for me, my message even to sex workers, you are beautiful, you are amazing. Those of you who are in the room, and even those who are not in the room,
we are it,
you
Mchana,
are
we are
beautiful,
it.
and we affirm you as civil society. And we need you. We need you to also contribute to the prevention agenda. We need you to ensure that the treatment agenda also becomes your agenda. So it's not for us to make sure that you are alive. We want you to also be alive, but also we need to make sure that we are part of the response. And I believe with the sex worker sector that continues to lead within civil society and within the AIDS response, they have our support completely. Thank you so much, Deputy Minister, for ensuring this space is here.
Siyabonga,
And we affirm our
siyabonga.
commitment to the work that you do in all sectors that we have. Thank you.
Siyabonga, siyabonga. Steve, sound, give me sound. Okay, yeah, good. Asikeke sisho sithi, we are committed to HIV prevention as sex workers. Angithi? Sithini, no condom, no sex. So, no condom, no mask. Exactly. And as it no to children in the industry, no. Yes, asibafuni abantwana. Asibafuni abantwana aba under 18 kwispace sethu asibafuni. Exactly. So asithatha about you in the room abafuna kubeka. Ningangizwa ngingarespondi uma ngabe nginizwa kahle sizoyipackage kahle bese siyasho ukuthi okwamanje asike sikhulumele. Sicela ababini abazokhuluma. Gisa zocela welcome usystem uDr Qulu CEO we South African National AIDS Council kwi platform sizothi uma ngabe abawu2 baqeda ukukhuluma sithathe ukhona uDr Makanya ngithi Dr. Makanya from the Department of Health. Team Deputy Minister bazoza bangitshele who's representing the Department of Health ngoba sizofuna ukuthi kube yena olandelayo. Asikwazi ukungawatholi ama contraceptives wethu. Asikwazi ukuthi sizale izingane. Yonke lento seyishiwe wrong kakhulu. So sifuna kuzwa ukuthi uDepartment of Health uzositshela athini. Sithatha babi.
One, two.
Ngiyabonga leli thuba engiliphiweyo ngalesi sikhathi. Ngithanda ukuthi kumama wethu siyabonga ukusimema okwenzileyo namhlanje. Thank you so much. My name is Mercy Nomsaremba. I'm the National Helpline Coordinator for Sweat and Sisonke. Mina ngizokhuluma nje about umsebenzi esiwenzayo and nendlela esisebenza ngayo. First of all, I want to make a few things clear and I want to make something straight. Not all sex workers are uneducated. Like a lot of people say that sex workers, they are very uneducated. Like even in a company, sisuka siye ku CEO, kuyefika ku gardener ngaphandle. All those people have got different qualifications. Bangene kulo msebenzi and they are in different departments. Of which mangisho, see now ama-sex workers now asebenza ngokuhlukeneyo, street-based, brothel-based, house-based, nabanye abasenzela okwabo. So enye into njalo ngifuna ukuthi ngiyikhulume namhlanje, ngikulekelela okushiwo ngumama. We don't deal with children. I want to repeat, we don't tolerate anyone who's under the age of 18. As I said, I work in the National Helpline for Sweat, whereby we receive calls from sex workers. Sex workers call in, we do call them, they send us call backs, we do home visits, we assist them in everything. That includes a psychosocial support. What happens is everybody out there, we are talking about HIV and AIDS. We talk about advocacy. So but you always forget the upkeep of the sex worker. We go to different places, knock on different doors, looking for funding to assist our sex workers for their own upkeep. But in Zima, we hardly get that. Like, for example, if I can give an example, what happened since COVID started. You know, it was in level 5. No one could go out to work. Sex workers depend on going out to look for clients. Even if some of the sex workers that works indoors, they depend on clients coming to them, but it was not happening because we had all those curfews. No one wanted to go out. There was a grant that was put out, the 350, and those who were working, they got UIF, but sex workers got totally nothing. Bekunzima. Bahluphekile abantwana babantu, kuhluphekiwe phandle. And what did Swet and Susenge do? She put out a call, starting donations from people. Then we had a thing that we called the body funding. Lapho esicela khona ukuthi abantu donate towards ukuthi sincedisane ngama-sex workers. Where we got well wishers, they donated close to about 320,000. Of it that was distributed to sex workers. Befumana nje imali encane. We're giving them just a small amount yokuthi bathole ukusurvive. So if only sex workers to be decriminalized, things are going to be better for each and everyone okuli industry. Because uzoba ne benefit here and there, uzokwazi ukuseva, uzoya kuma business uzothini. Enye into mama, emfuthi ngiyichazela lapha kuwe namhlanje ngiyosikhulumela because every day my job is to talk to sex workers. Ngikhuluma nawe each and every day ngisizwa izinkinga zabo. Yabona in meetings like this, a lot of people come up and say, we are there. We are going to help sex workers. We are going to assist the sex workers. But by the time if somebody calls me, quick helpline, I refer that person to that relevant place. They hardly get assistance. Sikhulumile, when you started off, you said we don't have to discriminate anyone. But abantu abaphumayo, people come out, befuna immediate exposure and say this and that. Into abangazenzi. If people come out to these spaces and say, we are going to do A, B, C, D, siyacela from the sex work sector, please, imele into yabo ishilo. Njengoba mawubuya ku-industry, ungathi ufuna isikhathi esinje, ufumana leso sikhathi, we deliver. We expect people to deliver as well. Siyacela mama uthi nxa usuqeda lento usuyigoqa, sicela ugcizelele ukuthi abantu bangathatheli i-sex workers phansi. Not ukuthi be called to meetings. Abantu nje siyabizwa kuma platforms amaningi. Some people just call us so that they can tick our boxes. Tick box, yes. Bafuna uyenza ama reports and everything. What we want is services to be delivered to sex workers. When it comes to social workers, in like any other department, it's social services, social workers, health, namapolis. There are good policemen, there are bad policemen. There are good social workers, there are bad social workers. We just need channels. If this happens, this is not right, this was not supposed to be done, or this was not supposed to happen. What are the channels that are supposed to follow? Especially the issue of children of sex workers are being removed. Please, can you tell us the right channel? If somebody calls me and says, they don't even, as far as I'm concerned, I think social workers should first investigate some cases. Abanye abakwenzi lokho. Mabezwa nje ukuthi igama labalithandayo ungumahosha, umntana uhambile. Ukuthi umthole umntana, it will take you an arm and a leg for you to get your child back. And lastly, and what I want to make clear as well, there is trafficking, there is sex work. People tend to confuse the two most of the times. Some people choose to do sex work. Hence the reason why we say we only want to deal with children that are with people that are over the age of 18 years. And one more thing, Sweat and Sisonke, we don't recruit anyone. We only deal with those who are already in the industry. Into esicela mama mangakahlali phansi, please can we have assistance? Siyalucela uncedo, siyaludinga. And all other organizations that are here and other people that are listening, we're looking for assistance for psychosocial support for sex workers. Thank you.
Olandelayo.
One, two. Sanibonani. Igama lami Sinisiwe Dlamini. Ngi-sex work, ngiyathengisa nje, strong food. And khona into engingayithandi yazi, sihlezi sibizwa ema-meetingini nje. khulunywe ngathi khulunywe kuba ma meeting khulunywe qede lapho emveni kokungabi khona shintsho into esesijwayele leyo hlezi ukhulunya ngathi kushiwo kuthiwa thina sinalokhu sidinga lokhu nalokhu kodwa awukho umehluko kube khona okwesibili amaphoyisa hlezi kuthiwa yasynthesizwa enziwa angifundanga ke guys ngicela ni mangisho igama mhlawumbe le-English kodwa mathi ngizo understand njengoba beza besha nabaningi bathi ama-sex workers awafundanga kanti sifundile ngalo hlobo lethu ngoba wethu umsebenzi udinga i-ID awudingi i-ID awudingi CV udinga i-condom nje kuphela okay but-ke khona lokho ukuthi HIV thina ama-sex workers akuthina spread i-HIV kakhulu kunabantu baselokishini bese kuthiwa thina spread i-HIV asispread thina i-HIV ngaphandle kwalama client lawa asuke sithatha i-advantage esihlukumeze emgwaqeni umuntu afuna ukulala ngaphandle kwe-condom and-ke futhi sometimes siyakwazi futhi ukulala nabo ngaphandle kwe-condom ukuthi kungathengwanga ubusuku bonke kadumile ungathenga funeka ugodukile ushiye ingane emuva akho sinkwa akho khadi uyovana so mabona nawe kushaya u-3 ekuseni awuthengiwe awuna-choice mos but kulowo ma-risk esuke siwenza suke sazi ukuthi ngakusasa ekuseni funeka ngihambe ngiye eklinikhi ngothola ama-health issues ama-right ami ukuthi ngiye eklinikhi ngifike ngicela usizo kodwa nje ukuthi uma ngifike eklinikhi unesi uzongitshela into ey'ningi enga-understand ngoba nakhe ngizomtshela ukuthi mina ngiphethwe isifo sangaphansi ngoba phela uma waqala eklinikhi wathi uphethwe isifo sangaphansi bayaqala bakubuza ukuthi hawu wena kanti njengoba uphethwe isifo sangaphansi ayisebenzisi ikhondom hayi nesi ngiyayisebenzisa ikhondom pho kwenze njani hayi iqhumile hayi okay ke nayo incwadi ngicela uhambe uyongilandela upartner wakho ngizothatha ba kade ngilala ubusuku bonke ngithengisa ubusuku bonke njengoba amadoda emangaka iyona yiphi le ndoda le ngizoyikhetha kuwo wonke amaklayenti ade nginawo ubusuku bonke ukuthi nginike le ncwadi ukuthi sibuyele naye emuva sikwazi ukuthola ukuthi silashwe soba u2 phinde futhi kube lento yokuthi kanjena thina ama-sex workers ave siyithanda ave sihlonipha and siyayithanda futhi ney'ngane zethu and masuke simlapha emgwaqeni suke sime ngokuthanda kwethu suke singafoswanga umuntu konke suke sikwenza ngami njengoba mina ngisho nje ukuthi angifundanga kodwa but I'm a professional sex worker ngiyayazi umsebenzi wami and i-service yami eyami understand mina usindo phethe umzimba wami it was my choice yokuthi ngenze ibhizinisi and ngingatshelwa omunye umuntu ukuthi mina ngoba nakho ngithengisa kukho right mina manje ngiyovota bangibuza ukuthi usebenzaphi khona ngibuza manje ngiyovota cha ngiyavota manje ka-Shoprite ngiyothenga bayangibuza ukuthi i-VAT sisi ini uplastic nami ngiyawuthenga njengoba uthenga unesi njengoba uthenga udokotela nami ngiyawuthenga uplastic izinto zonke ngizenza njengabo bonke kodwa why mina ngingakwazi ukuthi ngibonakale why mina okay fine ngumuntu wesifazane nginjani mina phakathi kwabo bonke abantu besifazane abala ngoba nakho umsebenzi wami engiwukhethile angithi kuthiwa ibhila la South Africa you have a right to choose your trade ngikhethelile manje yiphi inkinga indawo mina ngingakwazi ukuhlonishwa ngoba lapho mina ngime emgwaqeni omsebenzi uma phakathi kwabantu and kube khona lento ukuthi kuthiwa ama-sex workers maphambi kwey'kole uma kuyi-hotspot phambi kwesikole noma ngina-choice iy'ngane siyayihloniphe mina sidayise ebusuku understand and bangalokhu bethatha izinto ey'ncane belokhu bey'phosa la kuthina bona abasinike i-decriminalization cha into esiyifunayo ukuthi nathi saziwe sirecognizwe nathi sabantu besifazane sisonke mani sweat and sisonke together understand hayi bo amandla sex workers amandla sex workers amandla bayayazi into esifesana nabo nabantu emgwaqeni thina uyakwazi ungena emotweni uhambe nemoto umuntu akuvalele icapha uhambe naye ashushuluza awazi noma uyophila noma uyothini funeka uvuke lapho uyilwele futhi egcineni ngoba funeka uphindele emuva uphindele nemali uphindele ey'nganeni so mama nathi sicela ukuhlonishwa sicela ukuthanda
Siyabonga kakhulu awu i-important kakhulu into eshoyo ukuthi singazosebenzisa ama-sex worker ukugibela iy'tebhisi. Hayi mina ngize namhlanje ukuzosi-introduce ke kuma-sex worker wase-Amajuba njengo-district champion wase-Amajuba othunyiwe upresident ukuthi ngizosebenzela la e-Amajuba. Angifunanga ukuthi ngifike eMajuba ngimithe umaphoyisa amanesi bese ngivalela ama-sex worker ngaphandle. Azange ngikufune ukwenza lokho because kimina ama-sex worker abalekile and le ndlela kudala thina abanye sihamba yiloko ngithi noma nalo decriminalization hayi ukumthola yena sizomthola siyomlwela size sifike khona. So ngifune kwenza sure ukuthi uma ngabe sengifika eAmajuba ngizosebenza aMajuba ama-sex worker azi ukuthi abalekile njengayo i-social worker. Kodwa ngithe mase siyilungisa ngizo outline mama i-process so that uzwazi ukuthi uxhumana nobani kuphi njani nini so that le abuse ingasolo iqhubeka. Ngivumeleni ngithi kuya eAfrika si welcome i-sex worker yethu represent ama-sex workers in Africa sizobanakala ukuthi asikho nje eAmajuba siyonke indawo ngisho neAfrika ikhona. Ngimwelcome uMam Grace Makau azothi fafa umessage obuya eAfrika njenge South Africa iyiphathi yeAfrika ningenzakala kuphi iyenzakala yonke indawo. So asimukele uMam Grace Makau njenge sex worker a representer sex workers including us in South Africa eAfrika. Mam Grace, you have the floor. Technical assist, can we welcome Mrs. Grace, please? Mrs. Grace uzolandelwa sizoya ku Department of Health uma ngabe sesiceda kumamela i-message ka Sis Grace. Sis Grace, you have the floor. Hi, ngathi ngisacela kubuza uDr. Chidarekil le wase. Oh,
Hello, everyone.
oh, thanks, Sis Grace. Hi, welcome.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Yes, girl.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, girl. Go ahead. Mary, we would love to see
Yes.
you.
Yeah, so can you hear me? Hello.
Continue to speak, Sisi.
Jiko. I'm the policy.
can hear you.
Yeah, I'm the policy officer at ASFA. So I'm representing Grace, who is not feeling quite well. I think she had excused herself from the meeting previously. So I was given the subject to speak on, which is on the global issues that, as you know, ASWA is the Pan-African network of sex workers. So, yeah, so yeah, let me put my video on, that's fine. Yeah, so I hope you can all see. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Hello?
proceed. Proceed.
Yeah, so I'm a network for sex workers. And one of the things that we have been asked to talk to address global issues on sex work. So one of the things that we have been trying to do, and I want to acknowledge what the speakers that have spoken previously about, is the issue of acknowledging sex workers' work. So one of the things that as what we have been doing is trying to unpack sex work. So one of the things that we have done is we want the COVID-19 pandemic, and there is with closing of hotspots, with restricting work. And so one of the things that we have been trying to do is to try to see what does it mean that sex work is work. So one of the programs or projects we are doing is trying to look at sex work in terms of decent agenda, that is by the ILO. So what do we mean by sex work? So we are looking at advocating in terms of decent work agenda. And by decent work agenda, of course, we mean that sex workers need to be able to unionize. They need to be able to open bank accounts because most of the times, and from research that we have done, most of sex workers, when you ask, what do you do? Because that is a requirement by a bank to open a bank account. So when they are unable to say that I'm doing sex work, so one of the advocacy strategies we are using is through the decent work agenda that recognizes even informal work, which sex work is said to be. What can sex workers be able to benefit from other things that other sex workers are benefiting? That is from the decent work agenda. So the other thing that we are doing is to unpack the cream, like I had said. So it includes even the SDGs. That is something that we need to be able to look at. So when we say sex is work, where does it fit within the 12 thematic areas? So can we look at sex workers with children? Can we look at the access to health? Can we look at the access to education? Can we look at all these thematic areas? The other thing is about CEDAW, and someone mentioned about it. So we have been helping countries that are on for reporting to be able to in terms of what are the asks of sex workers. Besides saying sex work is work, how are we able to get into these thematic areas that all the other civil societies are talking about? Because when we talk about the cream, and when we speak even to members of parliament, policymakers, they do not seem to understand. But when we come with these issues, when they are broken down, then we find that now we are able to have a conversation. It's also a conversation that we are having with women organizations, with feminist organizations. So we see what we are advocating for is not something that is just because the accusation has been you people are claiming for things that are out of this world, that are not tenable, but we have mothers with children, we have transgender who need to access health. So we are trying to break all these issues into that. Yeah. So I hope I have been able to break down what we are really doing at the global level, at the regional level, and we are also encouraging national movements, because in terms of the landscape in Africa, we have criminalization and legalization. So those are issues we are using to address advocacy for decriminalization of sex work, and you are basing it on all these global, global thematic areas. Yes.
Thank you so much, ma'am, and thank you so much. May Sis Grace feel better. I would like to go to the Department of Health. Like we said, access to healthcare is a it's a human right. And I don't think you need to access health because Yabon, there can't be a because. And the reality of which services like health were disturbed by COVID is real. We experienced it not only for sex workers in terms of contraceptives, for everything. TB patients could not get their treatment, those on ARVs. And also, we've just realized, Uguchi, we have failed children who were born with HIV because we assumed that services we provide to people living with HIV, those that acquired it and those that were born with it, is the same thing. And I think that remains an important issue. So the Department of Health, Doc, you have the floor. Angazi, which are you in the platform or are you in the room? She's on the platform. All right, let's go to her so that she can actually answer some of the issues raised. And how does the Welcome Back campaign that the Department of Health is running assist sex workers? You have the floor, Doc.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Deputy Minister. I'm Tato Chidarikire, and I'm representing Dr. Makanya for the Department of Health. Let me also thank all the previous speakers, Deputy Ministers, Deputy Chair of SANAC CEO, and let me say all protocol observed. I hope I am audible.
Very
Can I
audible.
continue?
Very audible.
Right. Thank you very much. So the National Department of Health commits and continues to commit to support the sex worker program. And if I may start on a programmatic level, as a department, we have about 1,500 sites that we actually call key population sites or higher transmission area sites that actually service a lot of our sex workers. This includes our truck stops and our other areas where we find mostly our sex workers. And the department has a minimum package of interventions for prevention if we recognize that sex workers actually need to be supported as per the NSP objective of leaving no one behind. Deputy Minister, you mentioned the Welcome Back campaign, and the Welcome Back campaign is one of the strategies that we are using to ensure that those individuals that may have been, I would say, for lack of a better word, lost to follow up, or may have, again, for lack of a better word, fallen off the program for different reasons, or may not have been able to come back. We want to ensure that they are welcomed back in, able to continue where they actually fell off or dropped off. May it be on treatment, may it be on confirmation of testing, or retaining them on treatment. So we are actually striving to ensure that the Welcome Back campaign is on the ground. We're trying to ensure that we work with the, I would say CCMDD, which is our treatment program, to ensure that all our clients and all our sex workers and individuals that have actually gotten off the program actually do come back. And our key population program, the 1,500 sites across the country, are actually managed on an 85-25 50%, where the ratio is the 85% facilities and the 25% peer education driven. And we have seen that peer educators actually provide good support to navigate sex workers back into their facilities and to ensure that they receive the services that they need. So we continue as a department to provide outreach activities. And I would also like to echo Ms. Lizike's words or comments when she spoke about providing competent and sensitive services to sex workers. And that is why we have actually developed and we keep revising and reviewing our training manuals for sensitization to ensure that all our healthcare workers actually are sensitized and are trained to be competent so that they are able to provide services to everybody, including and particularly our sex workers, and not making them feel like they are not wanted within our public health facilities. I think, again, what we have seen is that within our 90, as much as we could say we have reached the first 90 in the total population, but we also know that when we go and granularize and look deeper into different populations, men, adolescents, girls and young women, sex workers, MSM, and other key populations, we see that within our sex worker population, we need a lot of work to ensure that we provide them with the services that they need, which is why we introduced the HIV self-screening services to ensure that they are provided with self-tests that they can use in the comfort of their own space. And we also did introduce the PrEP services to ensure that those who do test negative remain negative. Our condom program, as you know it, we actually rebranded and reprogrammed and changed the artwork, transitioning the branding from Choice to Max. And we continue to ensure that Max is provided. And I think I would throw this also to say that if there is any way that we can support, I am available in person and also within the team to say for condoms, as we know, condoms are primary available, both male and female condoms. I think Deputy Minister, let me pause it here, but basically to say the Department of Health continues to support the sex worker program. We continue to endorse sex worker plan, and we know there is one in review that is supposed to be endorsed very soon now. And thank you very much, and I would pause it here. Thank you.
Siyabonga, Department of Health, ngithemba ukuthi kodwa the issues raised by the sex workers remain important. That is why I always believe we are all sex workers. Sometimes sikhumbuzane that we are all sex workers. Ayikho sex worker engcono kunenye. Simane nje abanye sisebenza emgwaqweni, abanye nje sisuke sidlelana umona. Ngicela ukuthi sithi kuyilula kancane, sibeke umona phansi sithi, so that we prepare for the other two people before siya ku platform to take the other speaker. Awuke nje sithi yazini asinavalo sisebenza kanzima. Yabona mina ngikwazi ukucula, so abakwazi ukucula awuthi sike sizilule, sike sisukume sihambise igazi kudala sihleli. Kon 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 sisebenza kanzima anavalo asinavalo sisebenza kanzima asinavalo asinavalo kon 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 asna kon 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 con
ngomama. Ekuseni yondo nantambama kondomize nja asiya kondo nantambama kondomize asiya kondomize kondomize Aizanjalo asiya kondomize Ubo kondomize kuseni ngithi emini awunantambama awubo kondomize ebusuku ekuseni baba
Kondomize njalo.
awuthina singoma eshi ayo asiyekwe siloniswe nasi siyasebenza nkosi yami
Hawu siyasebenza nathi Nkosi yami vele. Awuthi ngiyibongele ngicela kuthatha ababini. Ithi mabaqeda ukuthi haha sibe si welcome ku platform uchairperson we Central Drug Authority. Hayi sesiyafika emaphethelweni la sizotshelana way forward. Yebo, siyafika njalo siyafika. Ngizocela ababini la phansi, ngicela ku welcome uNdabezitha Khumalo Mtungwa. Ngoba vele naseyindaweni samakhozi sicela kuthengisa njalo. Sicela boNdabezitha basivikele, boNdabezitha ngoba uma ngabe boNdabezitha basikhulumela, awu nalabo basihlukumeza emphakathini bangeke babe nala. So siyabonga Ndabezitha Khumalo ukuthi usijoyine urepresenta amakhosi ngoba nasendaweni zamakhosi sikhona ngithi so kumele sivikeleke. Siyabonga kakhulu Ndabezitha ukuthi ube nathi this afternoon. Ngisacela kuthatha ababini la sizoya kumama yethula Khoza ngoba sikhulumile ngithi ukuthi ngesinye isikhathi izidakamizwa ziningi la basisebenzisa zona ngenkani mase besithumba. So njengo chairperson we Central Drug Authority I contribution ye Central Drug Authority kulwisana nezidakamizwa but also ukuthi noma ngabe sesi addicted singabandlululwa njengoba sibandlululwa ka Home Affairs sibandlululwe kwezompilo. Sicela nokuthi u-social development must not discriminate us uma ngabe sesi addicted to ama drugs. Ngicela ukuthatha abawu2 la ku floor.
Okay, attention please. I'm at the back. I can call the shots now. Okay, so I just thought it was important for me to clarify this. Ukuthi, I heard a few speakers speaking of human trafficking. So I think the purpose of the dialogue today was to come up with a recommendation in terms of decriminalizing sex work, and to also highlight ukuthi out of all the sex workers we have consulted and did research with, none of the sex workers has ever said she's being trafficked or he's being trafficked. So my point is, let's not play hide and seek in terms of decriminalizing the sex work and try to put other things on the way. People are trafficked for so many reasons. You know, COVID came and there were people who were trafficked to do the mask that we are wearing. There are people who are trafficked to do salt that we put in our food.
And in the recommendations, I would also like to know ukuthi protection and safety that is responsible for everyone. Ukuthi maybe what is the turnaround strategy, as my colleague mentioned earlier, ukuthi they are working in unfair and unsafe working conditions. And also the last point I wanted to highlight is that Usisonke and Sweat does not promote illegal activities. It's also one of the things that we do not associate with. Thank you.
Siyabonga kakhulu, asithathe osibini. Asingaphuthi ima barriers, sicela i-decree nje kuphela.
Sanibonani.
Yebo.
Igama lami nguNomsajali, ngithanda ukuthi ke ngikhuluma ulimi elizophatha comfort. Ngiu human right defender weSwet, ngisebenzela uSwet. Ngihelpa ama-sex workers to fight for their rights.
Yes.
And going to where ama-sex workers asebenza khona and ngiwafundise ngama-basic of human right. And nayi inkinga esibhekene nayo as sex workers, as much as mina ngiphushile sinosweat ukuthi icase ivulwe epolice station, but inkinga eyenzakalayo ukuthi ama-case athinta u-sex worker phakathi nendawo aphelela endleleni, akukho umuntu okegwetshe kuthiwa nangu lo ugwetshe u-30 years ngoba nakho bekade ebulala u-sex worker or rape u-sex worker or wenzani. And then ngifuna ukuyazi ukuthi yini ozoyenza u-DSD wala Amajuba to push ukuthi ama-cases ama-sex workers angapheleli emanzini. Yini ubani engamholda accountable mangibona ukuthi akusenzeki ngale ndlela ekufuze ukuthi kuyenzeka ngabe kwenzeka ngayo njengamanje. Kuningi inkinga ezibhekene nama-sex workers ukuthi abanye mhlawumbe bazoba namahloni ukuthi beze ku-platform bazokhuluma ukuthi kwenzeke ukuthi. And mina njengomuntu oqhumana nabo straight, inkinga zabo bayiletha kumina. Into engifuna ukuphuma namhlanje sengiyazi ukuthi ubani engizothi mangabe khona la ngivaleleka khona ngimthinte. And sibele kuleya issue yeingane. Like ukuthi ama-social worker once wafika kuyona wamenshina indaba ukuthi you coming from sex workers industry or you talking about sex work, bonke bayazihlangula. And namaphoyisa masiwamemela kwispace la sizokhuluma khona ngama-issues ama-sex workers. Ipoint yokuqala abakubuzana uthi ufuna mina ngibe involved kubantu abacommit crime. Uyabona mesesho njalo because siyazi ukuthi kusakhona lo yamthetho omisi ukuthi usex worker ucommit crime. Although ngamchazela kanjani kusho ukuthi vele ikhanda lakhe liqinile. So ke into engifuna ukuthi mangiphuma la ngiphume sengiyazi ukuthi ubani engizothi mangihlangabezana nezingqinamba ngiqondane ngqo naye. Ngiyabonga.
Siyabonga kakhulu, awuzophuma wazi namhlanje. Uzophuma wazi ukuthi uqondana nabani. Bengicela ukuthi sithathe umama yethu la Khoza, uchairperson we-Central Drug Authority omusha sha. Sithemba ukuthi awu uzothi ukusihola. Mama yethu la Khoza, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Honorable Minister of Social Development, Ma'am Henrietta Bukupane-Zulu. I would also like to acknowledge all the other deputy ministers that have joined the dialogue namhlanje. Ngi-acknowledge zonke izikhulumi ezixavile zanamhlanje, ikakhulukazi okubalulekile uku-acknowledge ama-sex workers esinawo namhlanje. Sithanda ukubonga ithuba esinikezwe lona u-Deputy Minister we-Social Development ukuthi nathi si-Central Drug Authority kafushane nje i-CDA sibe nathi part of this dialogue with the sex worker sector. Okubalulekile kithi si-CDA ukuthi kubalulekile ukuthi silalele sizwe ukuthi athini ama-sex workers okanye ama-service users iziphi izinkinga abahlangabezana nazo nokuthi-ke singasebenzisana kanjani ukuthi sibancede sixazulule lezo zinkinga. And therefore, thank you, Honorable Deputy Minister. Sibasha thina-ke siyi-CDA. Kodwa-ke we are 1 week old. Siappointwe uMinister no Deputy Minister we Social Development. Ithisha ngiqale ngokuthi yini umsebenzi wethu kafushane. Thina-ke siyi-CDA, we are a statutory body established in terms of the law, which is the prevention of and treatment for substance abuse. Our role, in summary, as CDA, is to give effect to the National Drug Master Plan. Social development, lisebenzisana ne-CDA, ukuthi-ke manje, kulabo abasebenzisa izidakamizwa, society yethu, sehlise i-harm kubo, sehlise i-harm kuma-families wabo, sehlise i-harm nasemphakathini abahlala kuwona. So-ke we are expected as the CDA to work with all the role players and all the stakeholders who are using drugs to work. And ngithanda ukusho ukuthi mhlambe-ke nale sector ngizwile ukuthi bakhona-ke abashoyo ukuthi hayi thina siyakwazi ukusebenzisa ama-condom. Ngizwile ukuthi uthi-ke usisi wami laphaya futhi thina ama-condom siwasebenzisa ukudlula abanye abantu. So ngaleyo ndlela siyabonga ukuzwa lokho, kodwa siyazi ukuthi bakhona abanye-ke abaye bazithole esimeni sokuthi bangakwazi ukuwasebenzisa ama-condom. Mhlambe ama-client angafuni ukuthi basebenzise ama-condom. So-ke uma sebengawasebenzisa uthola ukuthi kuba nezifo abazitholayo, o-HIV, ama-sexual transmitted diseases, njalo njalo. So singena lapho-ke nathi siyi-CDA, relationship between sex work and drugs. Kodwa asisho ukuthi onke ama-sex workers asebenzisa isidakamizwa. Sikusho lokho, sikusho ukuthi bakhona abanye abasisebenzisayo just to cope with life, to cope with all the challenges that they experience. But also, njengoba besekusho ukuthi kunomehluko phakathi kwe-sex work ne-human trafficking. eMzansi Africa against their will. Bese-ke bayaforcwa ukuthi basebenzise izidakamizwa ukuze nabo basebenzise umzimba ukuze lama-pimps labo ababa-traffickile bathole izimali. So yebo kunomehluko phakathi kwe-sex work ne-human trafficking, but siyi-CDA kuyabaluleka ukuthi sibheke nangala ku-human trafficking ukuthi kwenziwani nokuthi singabanceda kanjani labo aba-trafficked. So umsebenzi wethu siyi-CDA kakhulukhulu ukuthi-ke si-coordinate i-implementation ye-National Drug Master Plan. Le yi-plan that recognizes sexual workers as well. It's a plan that recognizes abantu abasebenzisa isidakamizwa as well. Ukuthi-ke manje sisebenzisane nabo. So ngiyajabula Honorable Minister ukuthi ubize ama-department ahlukahlukene, o-Department of Health, o-Department of Justice, o-Department of Small Businesses. U-Deputy Minister ukhulumile laphaya ngoba umsebenzi wethu ukuthi-ke manje si-coordinate wonke lo msebenzi lo, silalele siyeza ukuthi ama-department, ama-speaker athile, civil society izokwenza lokhu nalokhu nalokhu. Umsebenzi wethu siyi-CDA ukuthi-ke simonitorishe implementation ye-National Drug, senze sure ukuthi ngempela kuyalandelelwa, ngempela kuyenziwa, because one of the speakers kunini saqala ukukhuluma ukuthi sifuna i-decriminalization, sifuna lokhu nalokhu, kodwa ushintsho luhamba kancane. So kuwumsebenzi wethu-ke siyi-CDA ukuthi senze ngempela lube khona ukuze nabo baphile impilo engcono. So yikuphi esikwenzayo nesizokwenza siyi-CDA? Sizwile njengoba kukhulunywa kule dialogue ukuthi ama-sex workers ngempela ahlangabezana nezinkinga eziningi lapho sibala istigma, lapho sibala i-vulnerability, lapho sibala treatwa njengazuthi bona bangama-enemies society. Sizwile nokuthi namaphoyisa nawatreat kahle ayabaharasa esikhathini esiningi bayababopha, kune-violence, kune-abuse, nokuthi manje akuna-access to i-health services, so that mhlambe labo abakhetha-ke ukwenza imisebenzi bakwazi ukuyenza. Sizwile u-Deputy Minister ekhuluma ngama-cooperatives, siyabonga kakhulu njalo njalo. So ngisho ukuthi sizwile Honorable Minister zonke izinkinga ama-sex workers abhekene nazo. Yikuphi-ke thina esikwenzayo or esikushoyo? Esikushoyo-ke namhlanje ukuthi siyavumelana nama-sex workers, siyavumelana nama-civil society organizations, walalele namhlanje ukuthi bathi kahle kahle sex workers in South Africa deserve to live in dignity and provide him in that sex work in South Africa must be decriminalized. Sizela CDA sizo supporta logo, sizela CDA sizo supporta lama recommendations as viswa abantu abaku sex work sector. So tina CCDA iguphi kahle kahle esikwenzayo. Sithi CCDA ngoba sine constitution la eMzansi Africa. I-constitution yethu ikhuluma kakhulu nge-human rights. So kuwo wonke umsebenzi esizowenza or esiwenzayo CCDA sesibeka phambili indaba yama-human rights ukuthi ama-sex workers ba-abantu banama-human rights. Lawo ma-human rights wabo, they must be protected and they must also enjoy them. Sithi-ke CCDA, we will be evidence-based. Asikwazi nje ukusukeleka sithi sizokwenza loku naloku naloku. Singekezwa ama-voices ama-sex workers. Siyajabula namhlanje ukuthi sizwa ama-voices ama-sex workers ukuthi badinga loku naloku nama-recommendations wabo ahamba kanjani. Sithi CCDA sizaba multi-sectoral, sisebenza nawo wonke ama-organizations, sisebenza nawo wonke ama-departments akhona. Ngiyajabula ukuthi obo-Deputy Minister were here. Sizosebenzisana nabo kulandelela ukuthi zonke lezi zinto abazikhulumile ama-departments ayazenza. We are people-centered, we are inclusive. Joba sesizwile, nothing for you without you. We are also participatory. Konke esikwenzayo senza sure ukuthi ama-sex workers will participate. If mhlambe bengaka-participate ku-CDA in the past, we will make sure going forward u-Deputy Minister nathi ukuthi ngempela you participate. Deputy Minister ukuthi wenza ukuthi nathi sibe khona sizolalela. So some of the things esizenzayo esizozenza ukureduce i-harm le ekukhulunywe ngayo amongst the drug users and the sex workers. Sishilo ukuthi ke siyahlukanisa, not everybody who's a sex worker is using drugs, but sithi kulabo abasebenzisa ama-drugs sithanda ukuthi ke babe safe futhi si-reduce i-harm le abayi-experienceayo. Okokuqala sizokwenza sure uma senza lo msebenzi ukuthi ke njengoba uMinister we-Justice eshilo ngaphambilini, really we need to speed up the review, the change, or even the repeal of laws and the bylaws, because no masipala banomsebenzi abawenzayo. The bylaws, uthatha ama-bylaws wama-sex workers. So sifuna ukuthi CDA sibheke lezo zinto sibone ukuthi ziyenzeka, so that if there's any violation of the rights of sex workers siyakwazi ukuthi sisebenzisane siqede lo. Okwesibili, wonke lama-harm esikhuluma ngawo sifuna ukuthi ke aphele ukuthi kube khona i-dignity kuma-sex workers nama-rights wabo abe respected. Okwesithathu ukuthi ke manje uma ngabe iyadingeka i-education, so CDAs we will coordinate and make sure ukuthi laba bane responsibility of educating, of empowering sex workers. Sengishilo ukuthi ngizwile ukuthi ama-sex workers ayawasebenzisa ama-condom njalo njalo. So kuningi ke esizokwenza sisebenzisana nathi ukuze senze sure isikakhulukazi ukuthi we prevent i-harm, siyayireduce kulabo abafuna ama-services ngempela bawathola ama-services. Ukusho-ke ukuthi mhlambe singaphinde sifunde nakumanye amazwe ukuthi wona enze njani. Siyezwa nge-Amsterdam ukuthi sikhuluma nje sengikhuluma ngama-drugs ukuthi abasawa boyikupha bangakufunda ukuthi esikwenza kahle. So CDA, we want to thank you, Honorable Minister, for inviting us. We want to thank the sector also for listening to all the speakers. May we all work towards a nation that respects the values of human rights, of freedom, of open-mindedness, and pragmatism. Ngiyabonga, Deputy Minister.
Sesiyabonga kakhulu mama Yethula Khoza. Ngaphandle kokumosha isikhathi ngicela welcome usex worker omkhulu. The real sex worker. Hayi ukuthi thina sikho real yabona. Osimaziyo kakhulu umamkholi Buthelezi uku platform mina ngimbiza ke usex worker wami omkhulu imentor yami yabona ku industry ye sex work yabona mus angithi withi kwi sex workers do it better sisho njalo angithi so kuyo yonke industry khona imentor so yabona kule sex work ay umamkholi ungibambile shame uyayivula nekhanda nefuthi kudala sihamba sincedeni lapho si welcome usex worker omkhulu mina naye siyashara le title ye chief sex worker so Siskoli the platform is yours.
This is Kholi Buthelezi, the national coordinator of the one and only National Sex Worker Movement in South Africa that is advocating for the call for decriminalization. Only adult, we totally against and anti underage and also women that are exploited into sex work. I've listened to all the speakers and greetings to all the panelists that have spoken, the DMs in the house, Madam Chair, Mam Hopane Zulu, thank you so much for this opportunity. And not forgetting my fellow colleagues that are present in this space. Today, unfortunately, I couldn't attend due to other commitments. My presentation today, I've actually prepared a presentation, but then I decided that let me not do that presentation because this event, it's happening in KZN. And not long ago, we have had the symposium that was held in KZN. So I think for me, it would be great to follow the resolutions that were made in KZN so that they are linked with this process because it is still the same province. I would like to just highlight before I go through the recommendations, the resolutions for the symposium that happened last week. There are a couple of things that I've just wanted to flag. I think when we talk about the sex work issues in the country, we tend to conflate the two. And from us sex workers and also members of the movement, myself being the founding member of the movement, since 2003 to date, it becomes a concern to us. There's a conflict of trafficking with the sex work. I believe there's law around trafficking, which we hoping and believe that the government should play its course in addressing that. Because with the sex work that we're advocating for, none of the self-identified sex workers that we work with have actually brought that kind of topic into our attention that they are being trafficked. I think also it is important that in such a platform, sex workers are being listened to because of the following reasons. It is difficult for us as a movement to fight underage that is exploited. Sex workers are mothers, are parents. So therefore, they don't want their children also to be exploited into sex work. As I said earlier on, we work with 18 and above. We anti-against the underage, which is one of the reasons we're calling for the decriminalization of adult sex work in the country, because we want the ones chose to be in the industry to be protected. So therefore, that would also give power and agency of the adult sex workers to fight the underage that is exploited, and also to report all the criminal activities such as trafficking. I think one of my colleagues had said in the room that the trafficking should be looked into in a bigger picture, because I myself, I haven't heard of a report that it's presented around the women that are being trafficked to do domestic and other things. I think it's important to flag that if I work in the brothel, for an example, and there is underage, I would not have power at this current stage of criminal law system in the country to report. But what will happen if it happens that there are some people that have reported the brothel, or I'm on the street, or let's say the brothel, because mostly places that are being raided are brothels. If their brothels that I'm in is reported, I will not have power to report. But believe me, when police or hawks bunch into that brothel, I myself will put myself in the position of being trafficked so that I can be fairly transported at home without being arrested. Believe me, I would not admit into the crime. So those are some of the things that I think it's important that we look into, because I wouldn't want South Africa to look into the reports that are somehow not true, because it does impact into my work. It does impact into the sex work industry work, and for my fellow colleagues also. So therefore, it is important that we protect and advocate for what is right, and also tell you the truth, that some of these cases that are being reported, I personally don't believe that they're true. As I made an example that the police were to bunch into the brothel, I would not admit that I'm a self-identified sex worker, but I would tell them that I'm also being trafficked, so that fairly I can be taken home or kept in a place of safety and be transported home fairly without being arrested. So those are some of the things that I think it's important to flag. And in terms of accessing, because the part of this platform, it is also to discuss around the sexual reproductive health for sex workers. We have said this in many platforms. When sex workers are being detained, they are not given access to their medication. Ask me what medication, I don't know, but we all take different medications. I might have high blood, I might have different types of diseases. This nowadays, there's a lot of diseases that are out there. We spoke about PrEP today, and we also talk about the reaching the 95 goals. I don't see that without the decriminalization of adult sex work in the country. Believe me, because why? When sex workers are being detained, they don't access medication. And there is no program that is initiated or is being put in place or implemented to look into what are the challenges that these sex workers are facing in terms of some of important things that I want this platform to go back home, having our questions ourselves. We work with the Department of Health. For an example, I've checked with sex workers, I think early this year, and they've told me that some provinces, the consification of a condom, it's still happening. So I don't understand how do we expect to comply in terms of practicing safer sex, because in some places you find out sex workers are hiding their condoms under the trees. Police know where to find those condoms. But the tricky part is that the bylaws are being wrongly used because bylaws. They would make use of the condom, but when you get to the police station, it's another story. For an example, when it comes to migrants they are being actually violated in many ways. Being a migrant and being in the country that is not your country, that is also a challenge. When they're being arrested, they're no longer using the charge of being or in a position of soliciting. They're now arrested for challenges in terms of when they are being detained. So we expect the Department of Health to say something, because you can't distribute condoms to sex workers or to us and expect us to practice the safer sex, but the police are taking those condoms. We need to really tackle the real issues that are affecting sex workers. I wouldn't want us to have sessions and dialogues and symposium just to talk. We have been talking about these issues. It's been many years. We need to do action, and we have been availing ourselves to government to say, as the national sex worker movement in the country, work hand in hand with us because we know the industry better than anyone. We are calling for the decriminalization, and we've got ideas on how the decriminalization of sex work should be implemented. We can make use of the New Zealand, and we can do it in the South African way. For an example, in New Zealand, if a client does not want to use condom, a sex worker has every right to report a case. So isn't it that reducing the HIV? Isn't that reducing the infection of the diseases? Isn't that part of reaching the NSP goals? One of Umama spoke about the CEDA and also spoke about the sustainable goals. We are left behind. I don't want to lie and say that the sustainable goals, it does actually accommodate the sex workers, because it doesn't. So it's high time that we do an action, which is the action would be to implement the decree in South Africa in a South African way. We are availing ourselves a meaningful participation of the sex workers and the sex work movement members to say we know how best we can prevent this. Because I personally feel that under the criminalization of sex work in the country, we are allowing the criminal activities to associate with sex workers. We are contributing towards the death of sex workers being killed. We are contributing towards the underages being exploited. So the decriminalization, it's a fair law that it's about the rights, it's not about the sexual intercourse, because people are engaging into sexual intercourse in any way. But the decriminalization of adult sex work, it's about law, it's about rights, it's about labor that we're calling for. And it is in favor of whoever wants to exit is every right to live. Who wants to stay will be protected. Underage will be protected. Trafficking, we are willing to work with anti-trafficking organizations in order to make sure that we can prevent all of those criminal activities. Sex workers end up unwillingly participating in criminal activities. We spoke of drugs. Some sex workers take drugs because they're not listened to by anyone. You know, so there's a lot of challenges that the sex workers are facing, but we are availing ourselves as an organization to say, work hand in hand. I'm still waiting for the Deputy Minister, John Jeffrey. You promised me meeting with my fellow colleagues and the DCRIM allies. And I'm so sorry that you caught up with the COVID. So I'm still waiting. So my invitation is still open. I was about to write it to you not long ago, but I had to conduct the National Sex Work Sector meeting to address some of the issues that are affecting sex workers in the country, because the organization, it actually as a in order to look into the advocacy work that are related, healthy and also legal, healthy within sex workers to be addressed. So allow me to read the following resolutions outcome of the KZN symposium that took place not long ago. So you won't be seeing me on the screen. I'm gonna read the resolution from the screen. You've already seen my face, and thank you so much. And I'm happy that the dialogue is hosted in my province. This is my home. KZN is my home. So at Westgate Grange Center, it was in Tamarisbek in Umsunduzi local municipality, which is part of KZN. Under the theme, I am, we are human. Noting that sex work is still regarded as a crime in South Africa, and people who engage in sex work are regarded as criminals. That this criminalization leads to the marginalization of people engaging into sex work and violation of that the South African government fast-tracked the process of the decriminalization and regulation of sex work in South Africa, as this will provide much needed freedom for people engaging into sex work. Noting number 2, it says, that the 2007 South African Law Reform Commission and the Project 107 report on sex work still relied upon the Department of Justice, despite the progress made by the NGOs to gain support of the total decriminalization of sex work. That this report does not incorporate a rights-based approach to decriminalization, and as such, it is still takes away the SALAC, South African Law Reform, should engage with not only stakeholders and organizations, but with sex workers themselves to compile a new report that acknowledges and incorporates all the progress that has been made in the fight for a full decriminalization of sex work. And this report adoption adopts a rights-based approach and recognizes the full decriminalization of sex work. It's as its best approach that can protect sex workers' human rights. And noting number 3, that people engaging in sex work are called by derogatory names by the general public, which impacts upon the human rights to dignity as it's envisioned in South African constitution. It is resolved that public education program about the sex work industry with a purpose to destigmatize the industry, to protect and maintain the rights of the people engaging into. There is a segregation of services according to the diseases in healthcare facilities, which comprises confidentiality and violates people's rights to privacy and dignity. The Department of to service by using the different interventions. It is resolved that all healthcare workers, especially from disclosing cleanliness of people through segregation of services, the healthcare workers must attend to treat all patients with dignity and respect, regardless of their race, gender, identity, sexual orientation, or occupation. And noting number 5, that the South African Police Services has the mandate to uphold the Constitution and its entire members of the execution of all the their duties. The execution of this code of conduct by police officers, it is not consistent or effective. That there are numerous cases where sex workers are discriminated against, arbitrarily arrested and abused by SAPS members, and not all that the public can use to report misconduct of police officers. This includes public rights to ask to speak to the senior members of the police stations to report the misconduct and abusive behavior. It is resolved that the members of SAPS be held fully accountable for all the misconduct, and these existing channels for reporting misconduct by implemented fully and consistently. Noting number 6, that there is still support for sex workers in need of basic human rights needs, especially during strict extended lockdown regulations, such as that many are left with no assistance and living in poverty. It is resolved that through the decriminalization, many and their families. Remember that we said that the sex workers, with the money that they gain within the industry, they're not only supporting themselves, but they're also breadwinners. The government makes a conscious effort to establish social support program for sex workers as citizens of the South Africa. This resolution was signed in KZN. So therefore, I felt the importance of continuing with this resolution so that can be also adopted in this platform, because KZN specifically, some of the issues that have raised today, as I've been listening, are similar to the issues that were raised in the Pietermaritzburg province. I take this opportunity to thank you all for giving me this platform to present and represent my fellow colleagues. Thank you so much.
Siyabonga sex worker omkhulu for always reminding us. Kodwa uDikrim yena hayi siyomthola. Ukumthola yena siyomthola. Angithi ke ngithathe obabini from the floor. Sesisebenzela emaphethelweni phela singazobambelela ama client wethu kumele siyo provide ama services. Isikhathi sethu sase office sesiyasondela. Asifuni ukuthi sinibambezele kakhulu. Sizothi ngithathe ababini from the floor
Let me just.
And sikhumbuzane ukuthi sex workers, even men are sex workers. Sangit? Yes, sex work has nothing to do with women only. Asithatha ababini from the floor. Bese sizoya ku-Sisithembi, ku-Dr. Qulu, CEO as the last speaker, we-Sanaki, azositshela ukuthi i-plan, ngoba enye into bengifuna ukuthi sizo-educate-ana. So ikhona i-sex worker plan, uSisithembi azokhuluma ngayo, sihambe la sazi ukuthi sicalaphi sigcinaphi. But njengoba bengipromisile, niyohamba nazi ukuthi uma kwenzakala ini kuma issues eniwa-raisile. Oqala
Ngiphinde nginibingelele kusaseyimi. Ngizocela ukusebenzisa u2 a time ku-subs. Subs sacela ukusebenzisana nani. Siyahlukumezeka estradini. 2, cela ukuthi niyekele ukuthi maningazi ukuthi nenzeni. Nizivakashele emasayithini, nizosibuza ukuthi ibhizinisi hamba kanjani. Akunifuni lokho. Okwenu ukuthi nisibuze ukuthi si-right si-safe yini. Bese siyacela guyizini ukuthi masifike e-police stage sizovula icala. Nisithathele emakhanda. Because lento esuke sinitshela yona kusuke kuyinto esuke yenzekile ekithini empilweni zethu. Mina ngihlala esontweni ku-Harding. Maningazi kumele nenzeni nivele nize esontweni. Makhona ubugebengu obenzakele nivele nize esontweni. Nizobuza kithi ngoba naku singama-service users. Kusho ukuthi thina sazana nezigebengu. Kodwa makuwukuthi sibike zethu inkinga anikuzwa lokho. 2, sacela ukuthi nisigqokele ama-name tag manize kuthini. Nikwazi enizokutsho kuthini. Danke.
siyabonga kakhulu olandelayo. Ukhona olandelayo? Okay. Oh, asikuncede ngemic sisi wami.
Untu. Molweni ninjani? Nguphilile kubheka ngina 23. Ningibona nje ngumahosha ngino matric. Ngicela ukuthi nisiphe ama vacancies. Nisilethele ko Shoprite kuphi sinengqondo sona siyanicela.
Sicela ukunikwa i-choice so that ngibe umahosha by choice. Hayi ukuthi ngihlukumezwe simo. Sisithembi mina ngimbiza uSisithi Dr. Qulu sinayo i-second sex worker plan ye-South Africa ibalekile kuthina as sex workers. Besicela nje usibambe kulama point abalekile esizohamba la siwakhumbula, because part yale dialogue ukuthi sin consult also ukuthi sinazise ngokuba khona nge-document elidwa u-government towards but singakhohlwa uDecree mina siyamfuna. Dr. Qulu.
Sanibona ngiyabonga kakhulu ku Deputy Minister ubukhupane Zulu. Namhlanje awukho ngiyazwakala kahle, ngicela ukubonga no coach we Sanak uMr Steve Letsike. Ngibongele ne leadership ye sex worker sector ngimzulu uSisikholi khona manje. And for me uSisikholi mangabe ekhuluma as imento kamama umama ubukhupane Zulu kusho ukuthi ke nami sengingena ekugcina nabantu abadala sebekhulume sengizothi nje qaphu. Ngibingelele the leadership of the sex worker sector nginibonile. And then I'd like to greet some development partners as well. Ngibonge all our male, female, and transgender sex workers. Ubabu Jasi made a very, very clear distinction this morning, Babu Jasi siyabonga, for clarifying the difference between prostitution and sex work. So sizwile and siyabonga. So ngizokhuluma namhlanje ezuma engicela ukuthi ngikhulume nge-National Sex Worker Plan ukuthi ngichaza ukuthi si how far ngale esinayo manje. But ma angazi noma uyakhumbula yini ukuthi mhla ngiqala ukubona ngelanga lami lesibili ngiseSanak. We had a sex worker dialogue AIC Premier Hotel ngase airport. Wathi umama so akusiza ukuthi sihlale la siloke sizenza ngona. It's either we are prepaid or we are on fixed term contract or we pay as you go. So kumele nje siqale lapho sivumelane ukuze when we collaborate and move forward, silalelane. So ma angisikhohlwa leso statement sakho because it really speaks to the needs that we need to be focusing on. Uma ngabe sizo sex worker plan that addresses the needs of this key and priority population. So le sex worker plan esikuyona manje ka 2019 to 2022 and even le yokuqala eka 2016 I think demonstrate i-commitment ye South Africa. Yayinama integrated packages, 6. It was along 6 themes. One of them was peer education, kukhona access to healthcare, kukhona psychosocial coming up around the access to healthcare, but also mental health services. Kube khona approaching sex worker issues, grounding the approach on human rights. That has come up repeatedly as well around violations of human rights. Kube khona issue of building on the capital, the social capital. Sixth pillar is the economic empowerment of sex workers. So, ngicela ukusho ukuthi ke le plan that is out there now also supports the decriminalization of sex work. And the plan that we are looking at has actually been aligned with 8 pillars and national. So the sex worker plan has been aligned to those pillars. And I think what that then allows, it allows ukuthi ema province ama province akwazi ukuthi a review progress of all sex worker work, planning from inception to implementation to monitoring to review, bakwenze aligned with our provincial plans, bakwenze aligned with our district implementation plans as well. So the pledge yet decriminalization, I think, is reconfirmed with a clear direction for law reform and the evidence that supports that. And what this new plan also introduces are mass strategies to reduce gender-based violence as well as human rights violations, like I said. So we have just come back from the South Africa TB conference, Siphuma SAA's conference last week, Siphuma United Nations high-level meeting on HIV and AIDS. And I think in all these meetings, South Africa has been very strong in terms of our ability to stand alone because we have a constitution that supports the human rights of key and vulnerable populations, which is where our sex workers fall. So, and then I'm proud to say Izolo, SANAC launched a private sector forum because SANAC being the highest body that coordinates strategies, the HIV and TB, nama STIs in this country, the private sector, as well as civil society. And we know that within a road freight business that have got, you know, a lot of sex work happening within that industry. And it's important that we speak and understand what are the needs in that particular scenario. And there were pledges that were made by the private sector themselves to say they are willing to move this conversation forward. But the key must be that the response must be centered and led by the sex workers themselves. So, uma sengivala ke masengisho ukuthi sifundile ama lessons from COVID-19. Uma just said akumele sithathe isikhathi eside manje, siyazi ukuthi kumele siphindele emsebenzini. But we learned a lot of lessons from COVID-19, from the importance of coordination, ukubaluleka kwe-collaboration, ukubaluleka kwama-partnerships, ukubaluleka kwe-funding, and I would say ukubaluleka kwe-political will. So Mambukhupane Zulu, ngifuna ukubonga for the political leadership that you've shown, not only for the sex worker sector, but also for men championing change, boys championing change. And if you look at one of the key issues that they are driving as Abantu Besilisa, is to say we want to reduce gender-based violence, which comes back to. So mina ngiwuThembisile Dumatulu, ngizwile kuma speakers zakho ukuthi ukhona uqulu ukhulumile. So uqulu dadewethu, ngithi ngikuzwile, baningi abanye abakhulumile, but kuthema ukuthi kuhla phansi nje ngikhandlovu. Uma ekhuluma kumina kuyazwakala ngoba ngiwasekhaya. But at the same time ubaba wami wakamgudlwa. So nginegazi lakaMthembu lakayemyemi yakavela bembhensele. And I'm here to say, having learned in terms of COVID, it's time that we put them back into the way we are going to address sex workers of this country. And siyabonga ma, you look great, udanse kamnandi, you are dressed for the part, and today's address was very, very informative. And from my end as SANAC, ngifuna ukustate ukuthi the submission for the endorsement of the sex worker plan has been signed by UDG Utelezi. It was due to be signed early this week by the minister. Sithe masi presenter in the middle of the week. Wase new minister wacela ukuthi ishintshwe ifake egameni lakhe ukuze abese eyisayina. So the signing of the new plan is imminent. So we remain committed, and we want to thank as well the new minister Amajuba Ngubane for her commitment to moving us forward. Ngiyabonga kakhulu ma.
All right. Siyabonga Dr. Kulu. Bengicela ngifuna kuyithinizwe kahle. Uyabona uDecream yena sizoba naye. Thina abanye njengoba ngipromisile. Sizothi mase siphuma ngiba ngishilo eceleni ngathi siyambonga uSocial Development, sibonga uUNFPA, sibonge iSouth African Network for People Who Use Drugs, sibonge neguidance yakasisonke neSweat. Uyothi mawuphuma uthole ama-sanitary towels, uthole roll on njalo, manje nje igift nje ukuthi si kickstart yabo. Sithole sanitizer la kule bag, bese sithola namalilete esiwasebenzisayo masingafuni ama-pads thina abanye, bese sithola mascara because it's the tools of the trade, darling. Uyabona mus. Aha. Usishilo usisi wami uyabona ukuthi and uthole kwa health bazokutshela ukuthi hambule to partner ubuthengise kubantu abawu10 uzothatha muphi. So ngenze sure ukuthi ama intimate wipes so that izoba ready for the next client and the next client and the next client. Sikhonile kwenza clean up. Uyabona mus. Yeah. Because it's the tools of the trade. Yebo siyayidinga intimate wipes yabona bangazosolo basitshela hayi sathi uUNFPA wathi sikhumbule ilanga lanamhlanje wasinika t-shirt abahle esizowafaka hayi ngathi Solanka nje ngoba uyedwa ekhaya nangu Colgate uzothi ushaya izinto zakhona nekhandlela futhi Eskom kulamalanga akadeleli inkosi yami. Aish, have ehluphile uEskom bandla. Yo, masiqeda lapho sathi, uyabona nangu ne makeup. Sizi sharp uma sesiyilungisa. Uyabona mus amazipho iphathi yeclass. Esenginikhethele favorite color wami. Ithi masithi mazipho siba ready for the office singahlupheki njalo. Hey Vitur, uyabona lipstick yena isignature ka sex work. Ngenze sure ukuthi lama lipstick aba amahle kakhulu phela ithi uyabona mus mase urenewa uyambona ne color ntasi angakuthathi ship. Uyabona nje hayi uyabona senze sure ukuthi vele maphoyisa ayadelela kodwa kahle kahle. How health uthi sisebenzisa ucondom bese maphoyisa wona yenza ucondom evidence. Uyazi mara kahle simane siyahlushwa nje. Bayahluleka le ezindlini zabo bashadile ukusebenzisa icondom. Bese thina masebenzisa ucondom bayasihlukumeza. Angazi ukuthi uba kanjani ucondom evidence. Hayi, senze sure makhona la sikhwameni. Ithi Hayi maningi kakhulu. Namuhla uyothatha amabhokisi ngendlela uthanda ngayo. Futhi senze sure ukuthi uMax yabona ngamakhala namagama nama flavor athi yazi baka deputy minister ave behluphile bandla. So sinama condom wethu abomama siyabonga UNFPA bese sinama condom wama service users ama male ngisho ukuthi ngama flavor kusukela ku grape, strawberry, banana nenoma lithi masishaya ublow job uyabona izinto zenzeke singasolo nje si frustrate. So namhlanje uyabona nje uwaphathe kubabonisa ukuthi ene wena awu distribute HIV. Bahlule siyahluleka kusebenzisa ama condom lapha emishadweni yethu. Uyabona ne razor ukuthi sishave le inyawo zethu ezinhle naye siyamprovide ngoba tools of the trade. Bese sikunika yabona the fancy squama ozofaka to do. No vaslap nje ngibonile ngiloko ngisula. Akusiyona wokugeza kucala ukuthi nje ungamshiyi uma ngabe sewushaya umakeup uyenza urefresh. All right, asikhulume ngama recommendations wethu njengoba ngishilo ngibize le session and ngiyazi ukuthi sihlezi sibizwa, but for mina bekubalekile ukuthi ngingafiki ngithunywe upresident Amajuba bese ngikhuluma nabafundisi namakhosi naboma bese ngishiya ama sex worker ngaphandle. Angikwazi ukwenza lokho. So namhlanje sihlangane ukuthi ngizazise njengo champion wase Amajuba ithi makhuluma nge district development model yase Amajuba njengoba uma ashilo imali yethu nathi iyathenga iyawukhulisa futhi nomnotho wase Amajuba. So bengafuna ukungena nje ngifike ngidelele emzini yenu nina nginganazi because kuma sector our important empilweni yami ama sex workers sizolungisa izinto zethu. Thana nginixoxela ukuthi njengoba senginibizile azothi maphoyisa acabanga kunihlukumeza avele nje akhumbula uDeputy Minister ukuthi yabona hands off my people, hands off. Hayi ungawari ntasi, niyayazi iMessenger, niyayazi iMessenger. Niphethe program unogama lami oliphelele. Uyabona awudinge ngisho no phone number yami mesishana no WhatsApp. Uvele uthi 1 2 3 4. Leyo futhi ayiphathwa official. Ngiyayiphendulela. So lozo kuhambena Henrietta Bohopane ngiyakutshela ngizobe sengivela. Shaya inbox private message si solve the problem. Sino district manager baka home affairs ngizwile nikhulume ngendaba zo birth certificate because uma ngabe aninama ID ingane zenu angeke sithole ugrant and sine right yokuthola ugrant. So ngicela u district manager waka home affairs athi kusukuma simbone, sukuma sikubone ngosi. Ngicela ukuthi nibone usocial worker omkhulu wasemajuba. Umamzethu uphi? Sengileya iway forward. Ngithe kwa decream ukufika siyofika. Ngicela kunihlabela futhi ningathini izwe ngami ukuthi yabona lo phethe uCyril Ramaphosa uyayiphusha indaba ye decream ngenyama somself. Futhi uyi-issuile ne-instruction ukuthi ufuna 100% decream, hayi half. So at least kuyomele si sheshe simthola uDecream because uma sino Decream we are also gonna be part of solving our crimes. We're gonna be credible witnesses. But njengoba ngishilo as a sex worker asuke kujwayela kabi o social worker no nurse namaphoyisa azothatha sex work before bakuservice. Ayikho leyo nto. Uservice yabona kunento ebizwa bodily autonomy. Umzimba wami ngilala nobani ngesikhathi lesi engithanda ngaso So asihloniphaneni bandla. Omunye nomunye uyi-expert emsebenzini wakhe. I-sex work wethu umsebenzi asihloniphaneni so that sizokwazi ukuthi ingane zethu zingalambi. So sine program esibiza Pastors Wives just ukwenza i-example abafazi babafundisi. And uku-interacta nabo as a sector kungifundise ukuthi kumele si-design ama-programs wabantwana, pastors' children, pastors' kids. So namhlanje I had ama-sex workers ekhala October. Ithi mase ngicela abantwana bama-sex workers bazokwazi ukuthi sibe the program where they can also be supported. But so izoba khona. Bengicela ukuthi mase ngiyibiza ingane sino program obizwa uChomi for 10 to 14-year-olds where we create a platform for abantwana, a healing safe space where children can express themselves, have support, play, and be able to get ngisho nayo psychosocial support. So ngizofuna ukuthi abantwana benu la Amajuba uChomi sesimlonchile eMadlangeni ukhona, sesimlonchile eDanhauser, sesizomshaya eNewcastle, and then bese sishaya idistrict. So ngizocela ukuthi kulama program abantwana bethu nabo babe khona so that bazoba in the safe space so ukuthi mabadinga uncedo. And silonchile campaign Stop Bullying. Ngifunde okuningi kunina ukuthi nabantwana kungani baka deputy minister babulisha ukuthi uma wabo ipolitician futhi akukhohliwa sinamanga njalo kodwa thana ngizwanga so sizwenza sure ukuthi la sisebenza khona Amajuba we're going to have a program that focuses on children of sex workers so that we give them skills and coping mechanisms to be able not to be bullied, not to be ill-treated, but also not ukuthukwa ngomsebenzi wenzwa abazali babo. So izoba khona leyo ngicela confirm. So mase ngibabiza nibalethe siyobafaka. Then sino yolo 15 to 24 of which ubuningi bethu as ama-sex workers we are young women. So sizofika naye uyolo sikwazi ukuthi sikhulume further with our young people ba abantwana bethu because some of us sinabantwana sebebadala abangalingani le kaChomi nabo sizothi mase sibabiza kuyolo sikwazi ukuthi niba release babe khona district manager wethu nethimba lakhe bakhona la bazosala bayenza i-groundwork uma mina ngisathishelele ngePitori ngiyenza omunye umsebenzi kwenye indawo. Ngicela kunitshela ukuthi nina eMajuba ninenhlanhla because you have a very dedicated team yaka social development. So umamzethu ngizocela ama-coordinators wama-sex workers all the cases uzoyenza i-meeting. Ngine faith 100% kumamzethu neteam yakhe because abakaze bangiphoxa so that sibeke individual cases because I repeat no social worker has the right to take your child just because you are a sex worker. Leyo it's illegal and it must not happen. La ama-social worker la Amajuba athethe abantwana benu umamzethu ngicela uzunginamulele sidinga ama-coordinator bomama abakhulumile abasebenzela isonke noSweat to bring uzosenza isikhathi umamzethu so that we can get your children back because that's absolutely unacceptable. Akwazi kwenzeka engizise buhlungu kakhulu it's the fact yokuthi antholanga o350 and njengoba ngihleli lapha I'm actually processing as nikulum ukuthi the other thing isasa yayenza was ukusheka ukuthi abantu banezimali emabhenki and sometimes as sex workers ni savele abantwana benu and because of that saving you might have been denied because i-system may refera ithi kunemali ebank. Niyayibona leyo nto. Kodwa ngihamba namhlanje ngihlakaniphile. But the other thing that I learned, because trafficking ilidwa u-social development, nama-shelters alidwa u-social development. And yichina esibizwayo uma ngabe kuthiwa abantu batraffikiwe. Today I've learned from Mam Kholi Nyabonga, as I said, mentor yam. Every time I learn new things. Into ayibeke etafuleni namhlanje. Ekumele u-social development athi ukuhlala phansi ayilungise is we must retrain ama-assessors wethu when they assess abantu abayenza trafficking. Because uma ngabe I'm gonna claim ukuthi I'm trafficked so that I can be safe, then nama statistics aba distorted. Niyabona bese sibonwa as the highest country in trafficking, when actually lento yokuthi singabi ne-decree contributes to high statistics the trafficking. Ngoba we get trafficked just to have peace. So it's ngifundile namhlanje. But also into engifuna kuyiqiza ukuthi social development is also responsible for my drug rehabilitation facilities. You are entitled to free rehabilitation. Ankokise ngicela ukuthi nibe nimtshela ukuthi kahle kahle ima wo ngicela i-rehab to be assisted and supported so that ngizobona ukuthi ngisebenzana kanjani nama-drugs angi-addicted kuwona, and you are entitled to the health. Usizo kumele ulitholile. Kune number engicela ukuthi uma ngabe siphethe amafoni wethu siyazi le number u-0800 428 428. Kunento nje encanyana engicabanga ukuthi uma sengenza le goodie bag ngiye ngakhohlwa kuyifaka. Kodwa ngizwenza iplan nama coordinators wenu. I-personal alarm. Sinawo amamemeza. Ama-personal alarm engabe as a team siye sakhumbula kwafaka kuma-bags. Because lama personal 0800 428 428. 0800 428 428. Awudingi airtime ukufonela leyo number. U-social development uyayikhokhela yes Abby, what? Yes, please. Nako ke seka solve i-problem yethu yama-personal alarm sizothi mase siphume eminyango sibe siwathola so that ukwazi ukumemeza njengoba umathe ngesinye isikhathi we work in the bush, we work in different make your memeza your friend so that uzokwazi ukuthi ikuncedise ngokuthi u-indicate even nakuma colleagues around you ukuthi sengidinga uncedo. Ngoba solanka nje uzweyidonsa izwenza ikhale ize ifike esikhathini esiningi isazise social development ukuthi sekunenkinga. Kodwa ngicela singabe sivula nje uyivule uma ngabe ngempela sewudinga usizo. Siyezwana ngithi uyolanda ke luckily siwaphethe sizothi masiphuma sibe siwathola. Kunentashinganyana eniye nayicela ngicela kubonga sisonke nayo uyilungisile ngisho le echitha isikhathi. Niyabona musi ngabe besisemsebenzini so khona okuncanyana akutheni nje kodwa okuncanyana nje ngokuthi simoshe isikhathi senu ehhovisi nama client futhi uSunday namhlanje ama client wethu ngabe kudala saqala ehhovisi njengama sex worker yama sex worker kuphela leyo nina abanye niphelezele ningayilindi akusiyona yenu eyethu kuphela nayo siye usisonke wasilekelela Nkosi yami ukuthi le ntashinga ilunge. Sendlule lapho sithi ke mama bathe ngifuna kwazi mangiphuma la namhlanje ukuthi uma ngabe nginenkinga ngibukene nami ngithe ningiload nonke Ningload nonke. Isibongo ne sikhona lapho kuma program enwaphethe. Whether Instagram uzokwazi uma ngabe ku Instagram uzokwazi ukuthi ungifakele a private message ngesinye isikhathi utshole ngisema meeting langa lonke kodwa angilali ngingaphendulanga wonke ama messages wami. Ngicela ningahlali ekhoneni nizwe ebhlungu kumele ushintsho nilibone. And ngicela ukuthi ngiyazi have kudala senibiza bandla. Senibiza sinisa le. Ngicela ke ukuthi thina uma ngabe sesinibiza kuzoqala lama public hearings wokuthi sikhulume ngale ndaba ye decree. Lena bekuyiphathi yokusheka ukuthi ngabe akhona ama sex worker Amajuba. Sengiyazi ukuthi sikhona. Manje mase siqala lama public hearings we decriminalization singazoyishiyela kwabanye abantu abangazizwisisi ngoba ivoice yabo iyosuka iphakame kakhulu uyabona. So kumele senze sure ukuthi this is a preparatory meeting for that public hearing. Sezwana, because ukusukela next month ukuthi sifike ujustice uzobe consult. Ngicela kunitshela webandla ningazothi nizwe ngomgaqweni. Uma ama sex workers angazi kuma ayilwela ayikhulumela bakhona abanganithandi abangasithandi abangathanda umsebenzi abazokhuluma kundlula thina. Bese simangele mase kufika egcineni iParliament aliphasisi decree. Kuyobe kuthi thina as ama sex workers sobe sihlulekile ukumela indaba yethu. Yazini ukuthi umthetho indlela owenziwa ngayo kwenzwa o public hearing kanje kukhuluma nama South African. Uma ngabe ivoice yama sex workers izoba phansi kuyowina laba abacabanga ukuthi abekhona ama sex worker. Bese sisala simangele. So kumele sibe mobilized, sibe loud, sibe visible. Mayiqala ama consultation we decriminalization i-dry run le. Sikhulumele because umthetho wase South Africa uyenzwa ngokuthi bathini ama South African. If our voice is low, iParliament won't have a choice. Izomamela laba abanama voices aphakamile. Asingabi surprised. Simzwela ngithi Deputy Minister. So ngivumeleni ukubonga uDeputy Minister ka Justice ne process seka outlineile nokuthi thina ka social development sizoyenza sure siyawa creator ama opportunities ukuthi ma sex workers ezwakale ukuthi ma sex workers ama voices wenu aphakame. Siyambonga uDeputy Minister wamaphoyisa sikubonge nawe Colonel uzwile hey inkinga enkulu yamaphoyisa besicela ke ukuthi wenze okunye ngako noma isex work ke isase criminalized kodwa we are women first before nisibeka ilabel. Siyabonga Deputy Minister we small business sibonga ukuthi sebaya recognize ukuthi si run ama business nathi. Siyabonga Deputy Minister for joining us this afternoon. Siyabonga UNFPA for being a partner reliable kuthina ezokwazi ukwenza sure ukuthi even as we go into decriminalization public hearings sex workers are able to participate. Ngicela nokubonga isanaki. Oh ngiyabonga. Ngicela kubonga isanaki ukuthi sikhumbuze ukuthi i-sex worker plan simbonge ke u-acting minister ka health umama Kubayi ngoba ukuthi ungasibambeleli mama sala social signature impilo izokwazi ukuchubeka. Sibonge olowamela the sex workers in Africa siyabonga. Sibonge uSteve Letsike on behalf of civil society. Sibonge umfundisi okhumbuzile ukuthi kahle kahle you know prostitution and sex work are not the same thing. Ngibongele also kumama yethu la Khoza oye wasikhumbuza ukuthi Central Drug Authority is on our side as the entity ezoyenza sure ukuthi kune prevention of substance abuse ngoba phakathi kwethu sithola sisenkingeni. Ngiye ngibatshele ngithi akekho umuntu ovukayo ekseni athi ngiyobhema inyawupe. Kukhona into enzakele empilweni yakho ukuthi ugcine ulapho. Sonke sila nami ngiye ngithi I'm a person who uses drugs because amaningi kakhulu amapilisi engiwaphuzayo. And ayikho ipilisi elingekho i-drugs, so sinokuthi sizenze ngcono kungabanye. Sithi reach out for help sizokwazi ukuncedisa. Ngicela kuyibonga i-men's sector, ngibonge wonke ama-stakeholders abe khona. Ngisho njalo ngithi la Amajuba yinina nizoba i-flagship project yokubonisa ukuthi impilo za sex workers can change. Nokuthi sex workers are actually human beings. There is a lot of programs esizwa roll out. Ge-identify, but ama-personal cases, usisi masiye bathroom bekangitshela ukuthi bekunomama osala nabantwana ebethu mangabe siye emsebenzini ebusuku. Waze waxoshwa nasefletini. Exoshelwa ukugada ingane. Umsangano wonke loyo. Because it means we are very responsible. Ukuthi we leave our children somewhere umangabe siye emsebenzini. So I understand ukuthi njengoba abantwana bayiswa ecrash yilaba abasebenza kwezinye indawo kungane ama crash wona angaxoshwa. Because now it's spaces to look after children. So masishiya abantwana bethu singabashiyi bodwa sibashiya somewhere. Somebody must be homeless, abantwana balahlelwe estradini just because una multiracial children. Sex work is not a black thing. Akusiyo into yabantu abamnyama. Sisonke kule way. Njengoba ngishilo, some of us are prepaid. Some of us are pay as you go. And laba who are pay as you go carry the biggest stigma. Yibona ababizwa uMahosha. Yibona ababizwa bonke. Sibe sicabanga ukuthi singcono kunabo. Ngicela kuyidemonstrate again nayi i-personal alarm yethu. Esizothi masiphuma la sithole ibizwa imemeza. The nice thing is that at the back kuna wonke amanamba ewadingayo. Kuno please call me. Kuno 0800 428 428. Kune Skype, kuna every number at the back. Abaleka kakhulu lawo manamba asiwashare nakulabo abangakhonanga kufika namhlanje. Siyenze itorch uyabona shiya lenye usebenzise lena ngoba thina sisebenza ebusuku kakhulu. Yilesikhathi siya eoffice. So sicela ukuthi uyayibona ifana ne key holder even nakuyi handbag yakho or naku bra uyakwazi ukuyibophela. So there kumele kwenzeke nje ukuthi ihlukane. Mawibuyisela izokuthula awuzikithi hawo nasepentini Nkosi yami uzothi uyibophele nje noma sazi ukuthi ebra kuzoba ngcono noma ngabe mhlambe ingane isala zodwa ekhaya uyakwazi ukuthi uthi speaker ngala uyihuke so that ungazospenda a monthly amount ukhokhela ualarm wazi ukuthi lona uzokwazi ukukuvikela. So esiphuma sizokwazi ukuthi sisonke sibe siyuthola ama personal memeza wethu. Siwahloniphe nje kakhulu. Angicale mina ngiyibongele kunina. Ngoba hawu have ningihloniphile bandla. Ngethembisa kunihlonipha nami. Ngethembisa uku-attenda ama-issues wenu. And uzonitshela uMamkholi ukuthi cha i-commitment kini from, let me speak for myself, from mina as a Deputy Minister ka Social Development, kimina sex workers are women first, they are men first, they are transgender, because i-discrimination ne-stigma nani izinto engizi experiencile. Njengomuntu ongaboni kahle emehlweni, ngiyazi kunjani ukubizwa amagama. Ngiyazi futhi ukuthi kunjani ukungaphatheki kahle. But also ngiyazi ukuthi i-rape is very ripe amongst our sector. As a rape victim myself, I know what it feels like. Ukurapiwa kungabi nomuntu okukholwayo. Because ngarapewa ngingane uthisha esikolweni. Wonke umuntu wathemba uthisha wangathembi mina. So leyo nto yokuthi ungamtholi ujustice ngiyayazi. But bengicela kusho ukuthi ama cases kwabantu abahlukumeza ama sex worker sesinawo umlando ngoba maningi nyana ama case la abantu sebethole o life sentence for killing a sex worker. So kancane bakhona asebe sentensiwa because of crimes committed against sex workers. So asikafiki la kumele sifike khona, but i-progress siyayenza. And nalabo abagwetshiwe abagwetshwanga nje, bagwetshwe ngoba sex workers were there outside the court demanding justice. So bengithi ama voices wethu awangalahleki in the background. Asithathe this as the beginning of working together, because every single psychosocial support, you commended yaga social development. Aksi into ekumele ngabe niyayigubha niyayigubhela niyayithandazela. It's a service that you must get. It's a service your children must get. But siyazi ukuthi ngesinye isikhathi ama officials wethu njengoba umama ashilo, there are good cops and bad cops, there are good social workers and bad ones, there are good doctors and nurses and bad ones. Asithi laba ababad sine social work council. Uma upage kuma packages wathola in as part of documents ama coordinators wam, you can report a social worker engayenzi kahle. We report ku social work council. But also mina ngiyawa engage ama social worker. So njengoba ngithe sisonke lapha asitholane lapha. Ithi social worker mangayenzi kahle ungazise ngoba yimina umqashi. Thina esibanika ama license ukuthi bakwazi kuba ama social worker. Ithana mabaphathisa ikhanda siba report. But bengicela ukuthi uma uthole I social worker eyenza kahle nayo usireportele, so that sizokhuthaza abangayenzi kahle sibe sine balance. Singakhulumi ngama social worker mayenze kabi, sikhulume nawo nangawo mayenze kahle, so that sizokwazi ukubakhuthaza. Ngivale ngokuthi ngicela nje ningiboleke the last 20 minutes kune program edlala lapha ku TV ibizwa ubuhlanti. Sizwenza episode yakhona manje. Sizothi masiloko senza episode yakhona laba bazosipha ama condom wethu nama package wethu abebelunga. Ngizocela umfundisi azosho ukuthi izwenzakala kanjani. Idlala every Saturday ngo 4 o'clock le program. Channel 251, right? Yes, channel 251. Any yama episode is going to be raising the voices of sex workers, so that basizwe, because sex work is work and sex workers do it better. So I'm an expert in sex. So singazenzela favor thina esicabanga ukuthi asikho ama sex workers. Sibe sicela ama tips ukuthi imishado yethu izwakheka ngithi ama sex workers abe asifundisa how to have sex, because you, us, we are experts in industry. Sengiyayibongela, cela ningasukumi njalo. Sithi nje uzoshesha mfundisi. Athi 2, 3, 4 sishayele episode bese siphuma kahle bazositshela sithole intashinga yethu basayilungisa ngale muva, intashinga yethu nezikhwama zethu nama condoms wethu nama personal alarm wethu sibe siyoyilungisela ukuye eoffice. Siyabonga kakhulu. Ayikho transport esiyikhokhelayo yaka DSD ezohamba ishiya ama sex worker la. Machutu batshele labo ukuthi ngicela singahlukumezani mina nabo. Ayikho transport ezoshiya umuntu sibe siyikhokhela ka social development. So there's no transport that's leaving to nowhere. We are finishing our session. They are providing a service. They must wait.
Okay. You represent certainly?
Nizomfuna UNFPA because she wants.
No, she can be excused, it's fine. Yeah. Dr. Khanach has joined us. Usap. Sweat. Can you choose? Okay. Sisonke ngahlala la. Sikude mos. All right. Bongs, mina right la. Huh? Okay. Huh?
Session guys. Ngale episode. Sound sicela ama Rovi mic please.
All right.
So that sizoshesha nina lapha emuva ivani nilunga so that ningazibambeleli.
All right. Sicela nje lapha back nisize nge noise. I-episode besiyenze Utrecht ibiphume yesterday. So thank you very much Bongani Pikinini ngokusilekelela kulo msebenzi. This is our contribution as men's sector. Manje ngilinde nje ubonga nathi already. Yeah. Okay, sizos introduce as if azange sikhulume before ne. Sizos introduce again. Including Deputy Minister. Angithi manje sikhuluma nabantu abasemakhaya. All right. Okay. All right. Bongs. Sanibonani ke emakhaya kwindawo zonke enibukele nikuzo. Siphinde ke saseBhlanti. eBhlanti ke namhlanje sithetha sikhulumisana nama sex workers bekushunquthula kunzima kuxoxwa. Zikhona ke izinto ezivelile ugovernment une commitment sizozwa nakuthi obaba bathini bona sizwe ke mhlambe nakuma organizations aba amele ama sex workers la South Africa. Sizwile ukuthi kunokuhlukumezeka okuningi kakhulu abantu baya abuse ngamaphoyisa njalo njalo. Even ama clients sometimes awafuna ukhokha abusive. Manje ke sifuna ukuthi sikhulumisane nani ke lapha emakhaya nazi ukuthi abosisi bethu nabobhuti bethu laba esibabiza ama-sex workers, impilo abayiphilayo ibhlungu kakhulu, including ukustigmatizwa kwey'ngane zabo, ngesinye isikhathi iy'ngane zabo azinakekelwa njalo njalo. Ngizoqala ngawe Dr. Khanaka ngoba useduze kunami. Ukhokhele ama-clients in this country. Nithini nina as men's movement under the banner of Dakwane Riime? And mhlambu songitshela nje yini difficulty nge-decree? I mean, we sine constitutional court in this country. We can just via Bramfontein without parliament and force that court to force parliament to decriminalize sex work. Usozazisa nalapha emakhaya.
No, ngiyabonga Jasi. Ngumatume Khanaka. I'm the deputy chairperson of the Sanak men's sector. The constitution yethu in South Africa, we actually praise it as one of the most progressive constitutions in the world, mainly because it's human rights based. Now, as Sanak men's sector, we have actually taken a clear call on the issue of Uti. We stand with the position of decriminalization of sex work. But Sibonilu Guti as Sanak men's sector, is why under Ibena Yetakwane Reme, we have begun to mobilize men in different forums and influence them so that they can really move with us on this position. And I want to be very specific because you also belong to that constituency. I think particularly men in the religious sector, faith-based, and men in the traditional leadership sector. We really need to engage each other to ensure that we really are moving with the same pace. But more importantly, it's not about waiting for every man to agree, because ultimately it's about the human right of sex workers. And with or without agreeing, Tina, we're going to decriminalize sex work. We want to be very clear about that. So when it comes to the parliament consultations, we're going to make sure that we mobilize men across South Africa to represent the voices of progressive men in those platforms so that we pass this act of decriminalizing sex work.
Thank you very much. Deputy Minister Mangzaguwe, sifuna ukuchecka nje kunama gift buhambisa la ingawahalela ama gift. Siwabonela ama gift wahambisa, but yini uhulumeni wakho njengoba ubushilo ukuthi urepresenta upresident in this district including the entire cabinet, yini uhulumeni wakho oyenzayo ukwenza sure ukuthi abosisi bethu nabobhuti bethu are protected ngalesikhathi sokusebenza, ngoba sizwile ukuthi umsebenzi lona akusi prostitution, is pure business and people must be protected kwi business. Yini uhulumeni wakho ayenzayo DM ukwenza sure ukuthi enye DM engihluphayo angikwazi udlula kulento, amaphoyisa ehlukumeza ama-sex workers, ama-clients awabahlukumeze awaboshwa bona, kwenzeka kanjani ukuthi lo othengile nangaboshwa kuboshwe lo omunye? Mhlambe yini enoyenza to ensure ukuthi both are protected? They're in business after all. DM
uHenrietta Bogopane Zulu, Deputy Minister ka Social Development. Asqale sithi as social development i-sex worker sector, it's among the sectors is allocated to social development. We are responsible to ensure as a department ukuthi inherent dignity and rights of sex workers are respected. Sizwile iCOVET iyenza ukuthi ama business wethu as sex workers angayenzeki kahle. Into yokuqala ngicela kusho ukuthi ingabukeka kuyinto encane, but the first thing ugovernment ayenzile ukwenza sure ukuthi siyakwazi ukuhlangana ngaphandle kokuhlukumezwa amaphoyisa, even though asikakabi decriminalized, but we are allowed and recognized as a sector. Yilogo okokuqala ukuthi the South African government acknowledge ukuthi sex work exists. Ekwesithu ukuthi siqale like sinama site asset a 1,500. We need more sites. La si train khona ama health professionals to assist ama sex workers to access ama services in a friendly way. Singakhohlwa ukuthi i-PrEP is amongst ama interventions ngoba siyazi ukuthi ngesinye isikhathi ama clients ayas-rape, and also indaba yokuthi free contraceptives akhona kumele siwa access. Si acknowledge ukuthi enye yama frustrations that COVID brought in the sex work sector, it's a lack of access to services. And that one, sisazoyifila impact, so government isikhathi eside, because in that infected, but also a lot of sex workers lost ama livelihoods wabo. So kumele sisho sithi we are committed kwi decriminalization. Ngicela kuyigcizelela leyo. And decriminalization, like polyandry, like civil union marriages, kancane, we are obliged as a human rights based nation to respect the inherent rights and dignity of sex workers.
Okay. Magasiye eitolo, masibuye eitolo so xosha okuncane ngibonela ukuyaphithizela lana, stay tuned. Bese ngishilo ngathi masibuye eitolo kuningi okuzawuvela. Siswam njengomuntu o representa le sector, ngicela nje mhlambe ke usho ukuthi nizikhulumele phela. Abantu bazikhulumele South Africa. Angithi ikhona list, but kunezinto urgent. Yini urgent nina engicabanga ukuthi as sex workers South Africa if ayifix lena into izaba ngathi akwenzwa ngalutho. Usozazisa nalapha emakhaya.
Ngiyabonga. Igama lami nguDuduzile Dlamini. Ngisuka ka-Swed Sex Workers Education and Advocacy Task Force. Ngimember kaSisonke, the movement of sex workers run by sex workers in South Africa. The major thing, to straight to the point, and I know that doesn't break any friendship. One, decriminalization of sex work. Why I'm saying that, because we've been, Sisonke and Sweat, we've been advocating such more than 25 years. We're advocating for a decriminalization. I know for the fact that what social development come up with now with the government, it's also very important. It's going to play a big role and change many lives into our sector as sex workers. But the important thing, we've been waiting, even the report when it comes out, it takes long. And we've done so much, lot of work, research, consultation. For me today in the sex workers sector, we are very happy that we get the opportunity with the Deputy Minister of Justice saying that the consultation will be happening next, I think from next month. That was the question that we were sitting with. Ukuthi sazi ukuthi ngempela kuzokwenzakalani after sebeyikhiphe the report. So today it's very clear, and we really appreciate social development ne plan yabo. Say welcome with all our hearts and happiness. Thank you, Ma'am Kopane.
Thank you very much. Deputy Minister, kunento oyikhulumile lana and ngicela uyiphinde so that abantu ababukele emakhaya babe clear. Uthe abantu abathatha ingane zosisi no mama abangama sex workers, it's illegal in South Africa. Mhlambe yiphi indlela uhulumeni anoyenza ngoba labantwana but deserve parents like everybody else. Yini mhlambe uhulumeni azayenza ukwenza sure ukuthi leza ingane zama sex workers zikhula njengabanye abantu normally. And then mhlambe Deputy Minister usho nokuthi from here ucabanga ukuthi wena yeyiphi indlela ngoba kunosisi beka wa raise something wathi babizelwa ama meeting njalo and akekho sure ukuthi kuzokwenzekana after this. Deputy Minister.
Ngicela ukuthi ngiphinde. You can't lose your child just because you are a sex worker. Ukuba a sex worker alone does not justify a removal of a child. Kunomehluko because as social development in terms of the Children's Act, we must first siqale sithi this child is in need of care and support, or this child is neglected and abused. But asikwazi ukuthi sivele sivuke ekseni sithathe ingane mawakho ayi sex worker just because she's a sex worker. There must be something more. So it's illegal for social workers to remove children from the care of their parents just because they are sex workers. It should not happen. It must not happen because ngaphandle ukuthi ushiye ingane noma heavy sex phambi kwengane noma, but just being a sex worker is not good enough a reason to sibone ingane seyifakwa ku foster care, sibone ingane seyiba ready for adoption. That is not correct. So if at all akona ama social workers wethu, because that's prejudice and stigma, akumele sisebenzise our own moral standards when we do our work. And we are not supposed to impose our morals and standards weight on other people. If kufiki complain yokuthi sex worker ingani, you don't awufiki ngisho even my ingane idinga needed awufiki uyimuce nje. There's a process, an evaluation, an assessment, report writing. So siyolixoxa even through the council. Udaba leli uma sisuka la, because akusiqala ivela indaba yokuthi ama sex worker athathelwa abantwana babo. Sizothi sifakelo ma specs sibukise and say where is the report that led to the removal of the child.
Yes. Thank you so much. Dr. Khanaga, quickly nje before si rushele to way forward, ngizwile ukuthi there will be engagements namadoda throughout the country, but I wanted to check ukuthi ingaba khona mhlambe i-training enokwenziwa ukwenza sure ukuthi amadoda also in support of this sector. I know masese Cape Town sithi sihleli laphana ekuphi, but for protection now ingaba khona mhlambe i-training enokwenziwa to ensure ukuthi leadership itself ye-men's sector throughout the country people are trained.
It's more than just training. Part of a program under Takwani Reme, Men Championing Change. Legama liyazi ukuthi we need to champion change as amadoda, because as much as ngapasa the laws, behavior yethu as amadoda in South Africa ultimately will bring that law into life, so that particularly around the issue of gender-based violence, it's quite a big crisis in South Africa, but it affects the most vulnerable. And sex workers as a community are quite highly impacted by the issues of it. Glad to say that from next month, Men's Parliament is going to roll out in traditional councils, Wonka 882, as well as Nama local municipalities, Wonka Pelela 226. And in those spaces, we want to make sure that we influence each other as Amadoda South Africa, so that we reduce issues of gender-based violence, which will also affect.
So are you declaring that officially, so sign MOU nama sex workers as full-time partners?
Sex work is the oldest profession in the world. Sayisana dala le MOU. Isikhathi sokuyimplementa manje.
Okay, thank you so much. Makasihambe seyitolo sothola amatiki siphinde sibuye. Siya go forward. Soqala ngawe. Okay.
Standing by, last one, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1,
Sesibuyile kwakhona sisebuhlanti ke ukhuluma noMbulelo Jasi, your host. Make siqale kuwe kwesisi wami Sizwa ku way forward manje kumhlambe kubalulekile ukuthi for the first time niz express because also South Africans makuyo kuma public hearings siyayazi negativity ezophuma lapha abanye will be using iBhayibhile abanye bazosebenzisa religion ukuni discriminate stigmatize njalo njalo yeyiphi mhlambe into ocabanga ukuthi ifuneka yenziwe towards public hearings so that we prepare our people and then so sinika no way forward ke ukuthi yino ilindele so uzwile emadodeni si ready to support you.
Into engayisho nje sihamba phezulu kwama uma useqalile wenza ama dialogue sisemphethweni wakhe sibambe phezulu kwakhe sihamba naye sizongena kuyo yonke indawo swelth and sisonke will be ready to hold ama dialogues namakhosi kuma rural areas and also hosting amanye ama dialogue with sex workers themselves to do a political education so that we're gonna be ready for us to speak for ourselves and empower them so that they cannot having any fear to raise their voices that day of the consultation. So that means that the plan umam wasayenzile inkulu isivulelile nje sizobambelela lapha emphethweni wakhe.
Thank you so much. I hope even communities will attend those dialogues for information sharing and also to empower citizens. DM, when from here in between lama public hearings, mhlambu social development sizambona enzani from here.
Social development uzobe popularizer I-plan yama sex workers because message wethu is very clear. Before ngiba yi-sex worker, I'm a woman first. Uma ngabe ngiyo-reporter i-crime, it's a crime against a human being. It's a crime against a woman. And where I work must not be the issue. We'll be making sure that sex workers access services. Futhi baya participate kwi-program yaka Welcome Back, yaka Department of Health, so that bazotola ama services akumele bawatholile, but also bazotola ne support ebayidingayo. So the dialogues will be continuing as we popularize the sex work strategy so that ama sex workers azokwazi ukuthi uma ngabe kwenzakala lokho senza lokho makwenzakala lokho senza lokho. So we will be there on the road show because our commitment ukuthi as sex workers we must be heard, we must be seen, we must be understood, and our trade must also be respected like other trades.
Dr. Khanaka, way forward.
Sizabe singeja namadoda to clear the misconceptions. Decriminalization, it's not about decriminalizing human trafficking. It's not about decriminalizing children who have sex. It's about decriminalizing women who are adults, who make a choice to say, it's my body, it's my choice. Just like Natama daughter, we use our bodies, we use our mind to trade, whether it's in being miners, truck drivers, doctors. We all have a choice in terms of the employment that we do, especially if it doesn't do harm to other human beings. So we'll be making sure that Sikuluma Namadota to clarify the misconceptions, but more in Women's Parliament to ensure that we bring the human rights agenda as a primary objective of our movement.
Just before I let you go, TM, earlier we were discussing Deputy Minister of Police, where he was promising South Africans that there will be training of police and so on. Mhlambe mawufika kwi-cabinet, can you push that training and dialogues with police ukuthi i-fast track, because osisi bethu bayakhala nobhuti bethu abaku-sex work ukuthi amaphoyisa awenzi kahle.
Into emnandi ukuthi u-Deputy Minister Matale is heading that program and ngicela kumkhulumela. We have witnessed the training of police. Seyayenzakala Prof police are already in training. It's not something esazwenzakala. Into enzakalayo. And siyambonga Deputy Minister Matale because yena no Minister Cele sebayenza sure ukuthi kune broader understanding because decriminalization is just going to be an act of parliament uma seyifika, but it must come to life and protect sex workers. So kumele si understand that ukuthi nathi as sex workers decriminalization is not a golden bullet ezosolve wonke ama problems wethu, but we must be ready for it, we must fight for it so that kube ne equalization of opportunities.
Siswam ngicela ukukhuluma nabefundisi. Kukhulunyiwe ngabefundisi la and especially misinterpretation yeyibhalo. Ngicela ukukhuluma nabefundisi bakulalela ungabe ungagadazeki bakulalela abana choice bayivulile la TV awukhulume nabo abefundisi.
Ama-sex workers amakholo nami. Who's looking after sex workers when they're standing in the dark corners? Who's looking after sex workers when they're taken by the client and survive from the killing by the client? It's God. Agikho i-sex worker ephuma endlini engathandazanga. Ayathandaza. Kanti futhi nemali abayenzayo bayayikhokha ishumu. Beside ukuthi bayangena esontweni bangasho ukuthi benza muphi umsebenzi. Bayaya esontweni. Bangayi-identify because of abafundisi bona kuqala bayabakhupha emasontweni if sebeza ukuthi benza lo msebenzi. So what I can say today, afundise basibonisa indlela, not ukuthi bajaje baphinde bahlawulele abantu ukuthi wena wenze wrong. So namhlanje ngithi kubefundisi khake bayibuke ngamanye amehlo le ndaba.
Thank you so much. Befundisi bami nevile lapha emakhaya amasonto nezwile ugovernment uzimisela ukusupporta i-sex workers. I-men's movement izimisele ukusupporta i-sex workers. Nathi ke sizimisele ukwenza sure sisebuhlantu ukuthi sawuthi gqolo ukumane sine-visitor kwindawo kuzo. Mna ndingumbulelo just manje ndithi kuni nje nonke ncenzeleli. Enkosi.